if you'll all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's all yours.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Alderman Barella.
Here.
Okay. Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Alderman Rucker. Here. Alderman Morose.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Nostine. Yeah. Mayor Harbinson.
Here. All right, everyone's present, and I'm going to turn this back over to our city administrator, Devin Lake.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Board. First, I wanted to tell you I laid a scoring sheet from last night on in front of each of you. I highlighted in yellow those that kind of try to give you a visual of who ranked things number 1, number 2, and so forth. You can see the average score over on the far right. They are in order of rank. So the lower the number, the higher it ranked. The higher the number, the lower it ranked. I also, just to play around with it, Cole and I talked about doing it like the Olympics, where they take the high and the low out, and it made very few changes. It swapped second and third place on the water sewer projects, and it flipped first and second place on the general fund projects, but that's the only changes that it made. So it seems to be a pretty good capture of the board's priorities. So we will continue this evening with the sewer fund, and we'll turn that over to Zach and Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Sewer Superintendent Nathan Earp. Chris is the sewer foreman. He is on vacation this week. First item on the list is the Gulfview sewer main replacement. We have noticed an uptick in failures over the last 3 years on this line. There is a private line paralleling the public line, makes ownership messy. We'd like to go through and replace both lines with a single line and then define the ownership with curb stops outside of the right-of-way. The current repairs have caused excessive road patches, and the sewer and water main separation doesn't meet current design guidelines. You can picture it. We've got a sewer main on the fog line, a separate sewer main, I don't know,
About in the middle.
4 feet off the middle, and then the water main's a couple foot off that secondary sewer line. So by cleaning that up too, we get the separation we needed from the water and sewer lines. The project is for $15,000 for engineering to design the project. FY26 construction was estimated at $175,000. Second item on the list. Oh, did you have anything to add about Gulfview? Does that wrap it up? Okay. Looking to purchase a compact wheel loader in 25. We keep adding individuals. We don't keep adding equipment at the same consistent rate. What we're noticing as we get more people in and we have more jobs going on, that equipment is out in the field more, and it kind of suffers for the stuff at the shop as far as loading up dump trucks. We'll use it for salt as well. Sometimes there's not a forklift back at the shop because both the skid steers are out. It also has a larger bucket. Currently, right now, we load most of the trucks with the skid steer, so we'd be able to use this and load them faster, a little bit more efficiently. It is road capable, so if there was a job closer to it, you could just drive it straight across the road. And then it has more reach than a skid steer, so you don't have to get right up on the truck when you're loading it. You know, you can be back a bit and a little less risk of damage to the vehicle itself.
Alderman Ross?
Is this a new purchase or is this a replacement?
This would be a new purchase.
Okay.
New purchase.
Yes.
And that's a brand new tractor, right?
Yep.
And
Brand new.
Hey, Zach, do you have a trailer for this already?
No, well, we have a trailer that.
That will
would fit
haul
on.
that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there any value in a used one? Tractors kind of last forever.
Right, and I think, when we go out for equipment, well, similar to like the mini skid steer, we have to budget for a new one just because we don't know what the used market looks like at the time we go to purchase it, but we can evaluate used options during that time.
Okay.
We just don't know what's going to be on the market next year when we go to look for a vehicle.
Okay, thanks.
One comment on that?
Yes, sir.
And I know we're all learning with budget, so please don't take this the wrong way, but when we do things like that, then we commit money that we can't utilize other places in the budget. So it's just something to think about when you try to do things like that.
Yeah, but there's no telling we'll get a used vehicle next year either.
No, but you can get a general idea. I'm not saying that it's easy, but there is an implication of taking that approach that you're going to assume a new, and if we do find, which would be great, a reasonable used one, which I realize that it's hard to predict the future, then we have tied up funds that we didn't end up using, which some people think that's a good way to do budgeting. That way it builds in a buffer, but it is an implication. That's all I had.
Well, it's the opposite. I have a problem which is the opposite. If you budget for the used and there's no used mark out there, then you're sitting there with, in this situation, $90,000 budget because you were going to buy used and there's none out there and you can't buy the new one. If we need it, we should budget for the new, and if we can get something, that's viable and used, but I think we should look to have the budgeting for the new. Thank you.
Thank
You know? New addition, an F-550 service truck. So similar to, we continue to expand vehicle constraints. We have 4 service trucks right now, and we have 9 technicians at full staff. I think we're at 8, 1 short. If we add 2 staff members, that'd bring us to 11 techs, which, the math is okay. Just kind of shortens our capabilities with it. So by adding the second truck, get a little bit more flexibility, be able to move the guys out more. And then, if you want to touch on that last point.
So this truck here we have one like it. It's what we use to lift the sands and the Rockway pumps. So our bigger pump stations. Our smaller crane trucks won't lift the weight. The one we've used to pull the sands pump, and I guess during the summer we tried to pull the pumps out, and the truck was needing to be taken to the shop, but we couldn't take it to the shop because we had to work at the sands. So it was either take it to the shop or rent a crane to do the work. So it'd be nice to have the redundancy of 2 vehicles that could still pull the same pumps.
Yeah, so that redundancy would be huge for us because these are the ones when you need to get them out, they need to come out now.
Right.
I mean, it's not 53-1, Rockway, it's Sands, imagine KK 114.
It's another one with the bigger pumps in it.
Shit.
Hey, Zach, real quick. I know redundancy is a good thing, but you can't have redundancy on every single piece of
It's off.
gear in the city. I mean, that's not possible, but how often does that come up that you're using that? This is a pretty expensive piece of gear, so how often does it come up that you're using that truck and then you need the second one? I mean, is it happened once because it had to go to the shop, or is it happening over and over? And if it did happen that one time, is it not something that could be rented or leased for the 2 weeks that it's, getting its transmission fixed or whatever?
Well, yes, and it hasn't happened but the one time now because that truck it's still fairly new. I mean, as that truck ages, we might be taking it into the shop more often. It does get used on a daily basis, the one we have now. Like I said, it's the only one we have that will pull the bigger pumps.
In that 30-foot reach.
Yeah, and it's got a 30-foot reach on. So some of the stations that we weren't able to reach before with the smaller trucks, we can reach it now with this truck.
And how many pumps do we have where only that one truck can do the work? Just
Well, if you're counting, do you want to know stations or how many pumps?
how many pumps?
So the Sands has 4 in it, with Ventura have 5, Rockaway has 3, so there's 8. 53-1 has 3, so that's, 11? And then we have KK 114, that's got 3 pumps in it.
How old is that other truck?
It's not even a year, 2 years. It was here whenever I got here, so probably 2 years old.
What'd it go in for?
What do you mean?
Hydraulics.
Oh, the hydraulics were going out, so actually the crane we were
The crane
using
itself.
had a hydraulic leak on it.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
as far as the truck goes, it's still a solid truck, but it's just had some hydraulic issues.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Is that this truck to give the new employees a vehicle?
Yes.
We're adding, excuse me, we're adding some new employees, or projected adding new employees, so they need a vehicle to go out and do their responsibility, so that's what this truck would be used
Right.
for.
At this time, right now, we have enough vehicles for everybody, but if we add 2 employees, we're 1 truck short. So instead of just going with a smaller crane truck that is limited, we just figure we might as well get the redundancy of having a larger truck to drive with the 2 new employees.
Thank you.
1227 Darwin sewer main. Earlier this year, it was discovered that a house was built on top of the gravity sewer main down on Nichols Point. So this would be engineering and construction of $142,000 just to relocate the sewer main so it's not underneath that house itself.
I'm sorry, did you say it was gravity?
It is a gravity main.
Have
Yep,
we
it's
had
not
any
forced.
problems with it?
The house is newly constructed. The house, I would say the house up top is the first house that's been on it, and then this would be the second house that's ever been on it in its life. So we haven't had any problems with it, but this is the first 2 people that have used it.
Yeah, there's never been any
It
flow
was
going
like
through it.
future use whenever Nichols Point was developed. And then so the house on the center island and then this new one.
So did we not know it was there whenever we issued the permit? Okay.
Yeah, this would be first in all, isn't it?
So at that time, single-family residential sewer and water were reviewed by one of my staff members. The mapping that we had available to us showed the line dead ending at that property line. So they gave us plans showing that they would gravity into a newly installed grinder station and pump it up the hill. But then it was later found out when these guys went out after it was constructed that, no, we've got a gravity main that runs through there, wasn't on the map.
Okay.
Paint the sewer main under the Grand Glaze. Oh, me and Nathan went down there 3 months ago. It was pretty
Yeah.
warm still.
Middle summer, probably.
MoDOT was painting the bridge on the underside. The crew actually called out about this, thinking that was a hole, but it's just flaking on the underbelly of it. There were past issues with that main. The 3 couplers for the bridge that go across do introduce, I don't know, some kind of chemicals, oils, whatever can come off a car, whatever de-icing they put on the bridge. And those 3 spots are the worst, and that is one of those areas where the bridge is separated at for the expansion. But we thought, this year we'll just go through and get it all painted, look at the whole thing, paint it all the way down both sides and get a good start and not just, let's just focus on the couplers. Just go ahead and get it all painted and then we'll just maintain it going forward in the future. It is critical infrastructure. In the past, we did have issues with one of the mains. I don't know if anybody remembers back in the day when that thing was all banded up and the pipes themselves had to get replaced. And it does come together. Okay, and it is coupled with a force main inspection. So before we spend the money on the paint, we want to make sure the main itself is in good shape. So either a visual interior or an ultrasonic pig to send through it and look at it. That would be a project that's slated further on down the presentation. Oh, it's the last
Very
project
last
on
slide.
the presentation.
Hey, Zach, who would do this job?
Similar to like a Ozark Applicators or any company that does like a 2-part anemic paint. Most times they do water towers and things like that.
But we would not do any part of it at all.
No, it's big. It's a lot. 2 dual 18-inch ductile iron mains. I think it was.
It's, the catwalk is off to the side of it, so it's actually hanging over the water. So you'd have to have some way to be able to get around it.
It will also need to be in full containment. You can't, when you sandblast this, you got to catch it all. And that's probably the main, the sandblasting itself and the paint itself is rather cheap, but the labor to install full containment and catch everything so you're not contaminating the waters of the United States is highly expensive.
What did Ameren do underneath there this summer? Do you remember? They were done at sandblasting and catching it, but was that the bridge itself?
Right.
Yeah, I think
And-
they were painting the bridge. I think they were painting the
MoDOT.
bridge as MoDOT doing it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was-
MoDOT. It was the girder, the steel girders and so forth. I
Okay.
heard Danny Rager talk about it on the radio one time. That's what they were doing.
Rockaway Lift Station Overflow Basin. This Rockaway itself was constructed 2002, 2004. We're kind of unsure about the date. Close to that time frame, though. There was a major failure in the station in 2023. The new basin will allow for additional time for response, so it will give us some overflow capabilities. At peak design or at peak flow, it was rated for 2 hours. And this will allow us to bypass the wet well for repairs. So you could send it to the overflow while you could work on the main wet well chamber itself. And it was just estimated as a good engineering practice to have this overflow storage there. It does come in at a hefty price tag at $665. I'll never complain about more storage, but it is expensive. And I would say that instances in 23, when that happened, the entire well went down because of leaks in the pipe, and we probably lost it for 10 days, a week and a half about. It was down and we were bypass pumping the whole time, or using pump trucks to handle it the whole time.
Alderman
Sir.
Ross.
Isn't the engineering for this already been approved and in process?
Cochrane is almost done with the engineering, yes. So
I'm sorry?
Cochrane is almost done with the engineering on this one.
Okay.
This must be additional engineering associated with that.
It might also be the construction inspection.
Can't hear you, Drew.
It might also be the construction inspection. At times, they lump those two things together, and they just pull out the construction costs. So
Yeah.
that might account for the discrepancy.
Okay, thanks.
Pre-bid meetings, all that. Now we're gonna start going through the lift station rehabs. KK37 is close to the stables when you're going down towards Margaritaville. It's a current dual wet well setup, so 2 wet wells, a duplex and a simplex, so complicated triplex. The aging electrical system has caused overflows, so if you see the big, 5-panel box, you're similar to seeing at KK 114 Rockaway or the Sands, it is having major problems. And right now, the little box on the side is controlling most of the station itself. So it's, that box is controlling things inside of this box, and that box is controlling things in the ground. So it just makes it complicated and a nightmare for the guys to work on. I mean, you're very familiar
Yeah,
with this. You wanna
we
touch on
actually
it?
just had issues with this all weekend, this station here. So the guys were in here, I think, well, I know he's in here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday trying to get it working. But it's just, it's hard to work on because you're working on 2 wet wells that are different depths. And it's got to talk to each pump to tell it when to come on. So if the wrong one comes on at the wrong time, it's just running dry and it gets real hot real fast. So it'll burn the pumps out. So there's a lot of logic to how this is set up, which, like Zach said, that the little side box on it is what runs the levels, and that was all aftermarket. I mean, that was an afterthought, actually, within the last few years that's been added to it. The duplex, or the deeper of the wet well, only has one pump in it, and then the shallower one is built for two. They're both built for two, but the deeper one still needs some plumbing work that never got done back whenever it was put in. So it only can take one pump right now, which really doesn't make sense to have one pump on the deeper one and two on the shallow. So it's, and this takes everything from Margaritaville. And if we were to use that extension that's down KK, it would all, no, does it go to that? It ties onto it. So that everything down Margaritaville goes to this station.
And that's outside city limits, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
The other issue is the recent construction has got an RV park wrapped around it pretty much. So back in the day, if an overflow occurred, it was at least manageable with the wooded lot and all. Now there is a RV park there.
Yeah, right below this station is all the RV spots in between it and the downhill. So when it overflows, it goes underneath people's campers.
Zach,
Yes, ma'am.
why or has this not been maintained? I mean, over a period of time, and all of a sudden, you've got this and it's failing completely.
Yeah, it's similar to
I'm sorry?
I would say it's similar to the methodology that we've had with the rest of the station over the years. I mean, it was all fine, and then now it's not. There wasn't a lot of thought going into a capital replacement cycle. It's just kind of now in the last few years when we're trying to tackle some of these projects, they are just getting worse and worse and worse. And yeah, I guess there's just the 20 years of practice on the system now. We're catching up onto it now. It's all getting old. And this would be a full system replacement. And that's why the price tag is, $600,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Lift station 30-5. It's off Red Bud, Land's End. Is that the condo?
Yeah.
So it services Land's End. Current gravity main is below the high water mark. The pictures on your computer may be better, but down here there is a manhole. And then further down the seawall on the lakeside, there is another manhole. And that manhole has been underwater.
Yeah.
Whenever that high was a couple years ago when the lake was real high. The station here, if you can see the panel, it's setting on because of all the slough off from the hillside. It's actually setting on the ground. When Nathan went out to take this picture, he actually had to dig it out so you can get the picture of this spaghetti of a mess panel, which over the years has had a lot of hands in it and a lot of people jumping and moving things, and it's created quite the mess out of it. This $280,000 would assess the gravity to get the gravity would get the gravity above the high water mark, address the issues in the panel, address the mechanical rehab of the station itself. Gravity system, panel bypass, and include bypass ports. It's just a nightmare to work on. I mean,
Yeah, you gotta dig it out every time you go there, which we've been fortunate enough to not have many, if any, issues on this station. But it's just a matter of time, and it's just
Zach,
a bad spot.
is there a reason this one is not, all the other projects are future fiscal year obligation?
Yep.
Is there a reason that this one, is this the most important one? Is that what you're saying by that, or?
well, this one was.
Or is it already
This
budgeted?
one was engineered. Last year was approved for the engineering, I believe, on this one. So that was kind
Okay.
of, next year we'll have those other 4 for construction with some new ones that go up for engineering.
I got you. Okay. I thought that was the case, but wasn't sure.
So I have one question, Zach.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, if we were to rehab it, whether we do it then or now, is there a way, it's hard to tell from the pictures, to dig it back and create some type of retaining wall to minimize any of the infiltration? of the rock and so forth,
Oh,
and digging it
yeah.
out?
As far as the panel goes, yeah. But, yeah, the panel could be raised and we could landscape around it. The other thing I guess the picture doesn't show is right where that panel sits is where we have to sit the truck to pull those pumps. So as far as building a wall, you got to be careful
Oh.
because then we might not have reach to be able to
From an
reach it.
access standpoint?
Right. But no, we do have plans to raise that panel up.
Okay.
$29.5, Passover Road. It's a triplex, it's a big mover. It does handle everything off Passover. Everything on Passover eventually hits this station. The issue with this one, the base plates on it are 4-inch, so these pumps reduce from 4 to 6, or from 6 to 4, and then they go back out to 6, which creates excessive hammer and wear. They've already messed with all 3 of these pumping slots this year to repair them. So it's just, I don't know, they're really big pumps, they're specialized pumps, so it's not, this is not a standard 6-inch pump for us. So we've got to get these 6x4s special, and that's the only spot they can go. So we've got 3 pumps that can only go in 3 slots, and if we have issues, then we have to worry about one of those pumps. We can't just pull one off the floor or move it from another station. We have 3 pumps, and those 3 pumps go right there. And it's just, as far as maintaining our pump inventory and to get away from specialized things. It would be a new mechanical rehab with bypass ports and a motor starter. The panel is in good shape. We're just gonna just upgrade the starters in that. Yeah, $25,000 to engineer it next year, and $375 is the estimated construction of it in '26.
This one seems like a lot more than the others and not doing as much is because of the price of the pumps.
Yeah.
Because they'll be replacing all 3 pumps to be able to get a 6-inch discharge on the pumps. Because right now those pumps are only a 4-inch discharge. So we're going to raise them.
So does that mean that those pumps aren't reusable in our system? Okay, so.
I
then-
can check with municipal on it as far as changing. The motor is probably usable, but depending on if you want to get into it, like the shaft, if you can put a different
Okay.
size stuff on it.
So, then my question is do we have any idea how old these pumps are right now?
One of those is fairly new.
Yeah.
One is fairly
I
new?
believe that blue one in the picture is probably ordered before, so within a year.
And that one's got a ring on,
Okay.
Yeah.
So we might be wasting it, and then round numbers about how much is one of these pumps because they're unique. Or they're unique to us at least. Round numbers.
what's the horse on it?
10 grand?
I think they're 80 horse, so it'll probably be around 70, 75,000.
Okay.
I do have one question.
$7,000 worth of motors. Okay.
I'm confused on what we're looking to approve here, because we're looking at engineering for 2025 of 25,000, but we're not looking for construction costs to do any of this until 2026. So when we are approving this or ranking this, are we looking at just the 25,000? Because we're not approving necessarily moving forward with construction, we're just looking at
We're only
engineering costs.
ranking the engineering.
Projects.
On those. The construction cost, if it's in red, that's for future. So the issue of this being engineered, and then by the time we get around to constructing it, it could be another 2-3 years till we get to the construction portion, and the pump size and all that would be identified, I would think, at that point. But we're just looking at the engineering on this one. And if you see.
Well, that's what I thought, that's why I'm confused.
Yeah.
I see the total numbers, but this would be a future down the line type of approval or vote for the actual construction of it, correct?
Correct. So my idea was to give you guys an idea of what you're looking at construction-wise, so you're not blindsided when we come back and say,
For
okay, it's been
2026.
designed, now it's time to construct it, and you guys are shell-shocked when it's $375,000.
Okay, because all the other ones have been 2025. This is the first one I remember that's a 2026 construction.
Well, like similar to KK 37, like if we would have just asked, oh, we need 30,000 for engineering, and then hit you with the $600,000 price tag later, it's just,
Okay.
correct me if
Okay.
I'm wrong, but just more of a transparency.
I'm just trying to clarify once again for ranking purposes on when it comes to actual dollars for 2025, since we're setting that budget, what are we looking at for next year's budget?
So just for clarity then, is everything that's in red under construction 26 or future?
Correct.
Okay.
I've got a question now, too.
Sure.
And more I think about it, too, all these engineering costs, the one we're on right now, $25,000 engineered, so Alderman Osteen, as you were saying, that we're going to pay $25,000 to have it engineered, it may not be done until 25, 26. So then all of a sudden in 25, they've got a brand-new pump that is so much better. But we've already paid 25 grand to have it engineered from the pump that was 2 years ago. Do we have to have it engineered again for the better pump?
No, these are more mechanical based. It's you wouldn't change the dynamics of it or the hydraulics of it by doing this. So like the pumps wouldn't affect what we're doing here. We're doing the hard piping, some panel issues, those kind of things.
Just changing the size of the plumbing on the inside.
More the
to
infrastructure.
where we can take a 6-inch pump instead of a 4. So then in 2 or 3 years, if they got a different pump, it won't matter. It's still a 6-inch pipe.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
One of the issues with this one, right, is that the sizes of the pipes come up and then down. Is that?
Yeah, they got 4-inch bases, 6-inch pipe. Yeah.
Right, so then that creates a void in the pipe on both sides of the reduction and the increase, and that creates that hammer issue, which greatly decreases the life of the pumps if they're experiencing a bunch of hammer. So,
Cavitation.
A lot of issues we have with this one is that the bolts break. Because, you got a 1,500-pound pump hanging on a little 4-inch, and it's doing all that hammering and stuff. The bolts break off, and we'll show up there, and it'll be laying in the bottom on its side. And you got to pick it up.
which is bad for.
Right, not good.
Lift station 30-1. If you can see in the background, that's Jet's Trampoline. This would be the corner of Passover and Redbud. This will be our standard rehab, going back to that maintenance mindset. Let's replace it before it actually fails. It has lived out its life. This will be a new panel mechanical rehab and bypass ports. $18,000 for construction in 25, $18,000 for engineering in 25, $200 for construction in 26. A picture of the well itself and then the panel.
Zach, another question, please.
Sure.
Do you foresee any of these engineering costs being able to be lessened by doing that in-house, or is this specialized enough where it has to be outsourced?
How do you feel?
I know we could do all of it in-house. It's just the manpower and the time.
Don't have the
Like,
staff for it.
we just don't have the time to do it now. I had a whole plan this morning, and before we walked out, we changed the whole plan of the day. So I know it can be done because we did it when I was here before. We did a few of them, but it's just maybe in 27 we might have the time, but I don't know if you want to bank on that.
But more personnel could possibly
More personnel.
alleviate some of these third-party.
Right.
Okay.
So from a technical standpoint, this truly needs engineering versus it just needs someone to develop a scope of work that can be bid out? Because it sounds like the sewer department was doing this before versus one of our in-house
Well,
engineers? Is that what your means?
Well, before we had Nick and Eric
Okay.
at Public Works, so we had the engineering there.
Okay.
So then they just.
So it was basically the engineering department that was doing it,
Right.
other than Eric
Yeah,
resided?
we were doing the work, I'm sorry. We were doing the work, they had the plan built out.
Okay. And we'll talk about it at a later time, but Deb and I already talked about this. I think that the challenge is workload, okay, to do it in-house. And there may be some ways that we can more quickly get past that.
Not the last. 4235 is Kaiser Industrial. This receives the flow from the state park. It does handle high I&I surges, so during big rain events, the park is leaky. They've got a lot of brick line manholes. It does take on a lot of the rainwater. It overloads the station. The station will pump for days. Is that a fair statement to
Yeah.
make on a big rain event?
Yep.
So it's undersized for that flow. It can't handle the peak demand. It is it is a modified treatment plant. We'd like to abandon that and just make a new duplex station, pretty much what it is now. We have some constraints there because there's only single phase power. So we don't have the benefit of going 3-phase on this thing and really upsizing it. Right. So we pretty much have to just go with the maximum we can get at the station, which it'll be a lot better than it is now. $15,000 for engineering next year. Estimated construction is going to be 180. Just
So
because of the
why can't we, what is prohibiting us from addressing the I&I? Is it, I don't know, it's hard to tell from the pictures. Is it set at the bottom of a big concrete pit or valley?
Oh,
or?
we don't. The I&I is a product of the state park itself. So all the sewer that comes up Kaiser from the state park, if it rains and they're brick-lined manholes, the water starts flowing into them, cracks in the pipes.
Which that goes to their lift stations, and then their lift stations are pumping to this one.
Okay, and I'm sorry if we need to take this offline another way, but I was under the impression that if we took over the airport, we were taking their sewer.
Yeah.
Right, and so I was under the impression in conversations I had with previous employees that those kinds of I&I and so forth were going to be resolved before we took them. It doesn't sound like that's the case. Am I missing something?
No.
Okay, so there's going to be some significant costs just to bring that system up to a reasonable state once we take it over that have not been included, I'm guessing, in the agreement. You may not know about that.
In my mind, it is Tantera-esque. You know, you're taking in a system that will require a lot of work and a lot of maintenance. And, you know, if that's the direction of the board to do that, there'll be issues. I mean, there'll be other things in here that we're going to try to address that with, but to get ahead of it and get.
And I'm not so sure, I'm not sure, this isn't necessarily USAC, this is for everyone. I'm not sure how best to discuss this in depth, but I was always under the impression that that system was going to be brought up to our standards before we took it over. Doesn't appear in your mind that's going to be.
In my mind, we're going to be taking over a dinosaur that's got a lot of issues.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know.
I'd agree.
I'm not so sure, Richard, that we should ask staff to research that.
I said I wasn't sure the right.
Well, I'm not 100% sure I agree, but I can't 100% disagree. And I do recall some conversation, and I just think that we should do a little research there, double check back when we made that agreement. I believe there was some written stuff. I would like to have that answered to see if they weren't supposed to be doing something and they are not doing it. But I think it deserves a little research. I can't agree or disagree, but I think we should have the question answered.
Just one response to that would be, I think that before we sign the papers to take over the sewer system and the airport, we should have a much better idea than what apparently we do right now on what the costs are going to be over the next 5 years to get that to it. Because if we're taking over, sorry, use your words, a dinosaur on a place that is much farther to service than what we currently have, and we have challenges with staffing already, we are about to create a perfect storm is what I'm beginning to wonder. And I see both their heads nodding. Yeah. So we'll just leave it at that.
Not a fuzzy feeling down in Public Works about it. 29-1, it is the roundabout on Passover. So this would be, we're actually going to reduce this station from a triplex to a duplex. It doesn't receive the type of flow that would rate a triplex station. So by removing one of those pumps, we hope to eliminate some of the costs associated with that third pumping chamber. This will be a new panel, mechanical rehab, and bypass ports. Now, this is a good example of the kind of issues we're running into. The panel itself looks fairly new. It's in good shape. You know, the wiring is still kind of neat. It hasn't had a lot of fingers in there. Not a lot of people have messed with it. But because of the H2S that travels up the station and up these pipes, like the copper inside there is brittle now. They'll break off. I don't know, what other issues can you contact?
You stick your hand in there with a screwdriver and bump one and don't know it, then you're fighting another problem trying to figure out what happened, which happens often here. We've installed 2 new panels throughout the city, We're trying they call it an air gap, where the conduit actually doesn't attach to the panel. So if any gases do follow the conduit up, they're blown away by the wind. So the panel's completely safe. So that might be something we adopt later on if it seems to be making a difference. But this one here is highly affected by the H2S.
$25,000 for engineering in 25, $325 for construction in 26. This is Rockaway, the inside of Rockaway. Some really good pictures. I don't know if I've ever seen a picture this good. They were doing some work on this chamber here, I think.
Yep.
They were able to get in there and get some really good pictures for us. As you can see, there was some degradation of the wet well itself at one time, and they tried to stabilize it with a liner. So a lot of that heavy aggregate looking is an old liner that's falling off, but it is a result of them trying to fix it once in the past. What we would like to do is use this Monoform Plus technology. This is an HDPE liner with anchors in it. They form it and weld it inside of the wet well, and then there's about 6 inches of space left over. They fill that with a geocrete.
With the what?
With a geocrete, a concrete, elastic polymer kind of mix. And then so that will actually give you 6 extra inches of the wet well. So you would reduce your holding a bit, but for the size of the station, it's not a big deal. And it will give you a non-reactive HDPE liner as your new wet well. So everything would come out, they would weld these liners in there, pour the concrete on the back side of them. The last 18 inches will have to be that geocrete solely, just because of the we won't be able to take the lid off. And then everything goes back in brand new. New bases, new inlet pipes, new outgoing pipes. And for that, it's $125,000. I think, well, I want to say, my personal professional opinion is that this kind of technology right here will outlast a foam all day, every day. And especially considering we're going to get 6 inches extra on that wet well, new meat on that bone per se. So I think, from what me and Nathan have looked at, going with this type of technology is going to give us something that will last and extend the life of that wet well. I mean, get 6 inches of new wet well plus that liner. I don't think we'll have any issues with it in the going forward.
So 2 questions. One is this has been the big question about this project all along, is do we need to do the overflow basin before we can do the lining?
No, we don't.
No. Yeah.
Good, that's all I would,
Yeah.
thank you, we can stop there, okay? Alderman Hoffman and I stumbled across this over at Margaritaville when we went over to talk about some pumps, and there was some folks there that had already looked at this a couple of years before, and they kind of, be quite honest, freaked us out a little bit with some of their pictures and concerns about the condition of this. So they did some more type of an epoxy coating and so forth, from what I gathered. And so we didn't know about this, but you all feel like, do you have any idea what for lack of a better term, the asset life of this would be compared to that one, the epoxy? They said that their epoxy would. Huh?
We've done the epoxy. There's a couple manholes.
There's a couple manholes in Tantera that have the epoxy in them, and it still looks good.
Do you have any idea how old it is, the epoxy?
That stuff there was an epoxy that was put in there then, because they did that when I was here before. That was all sprayed in.
How long did that, so that's great to
So
know. How long did that
it's-
last? Round numbers, best guess.
I would say maybe 8, 7
8 or
years.
10 years? Okay, that's not that long.
Right.
Thank you, that's all I have.
The other thing with the epoxy is you have to clean that super well, or else it's going to flake off like that. And with this liner, if we can keep it dry, they don't necessarily have to get in there and clean it real good, because they're just going to pour concrete in between the liner and the wall. So, in my mind, it's going to stay there a lot longer.
We'd like to expand on our SCADA system this year as well. We're looking to buy 51 high tides, plus upgrade a couple of the existing ones to the Gen 2s. This would be the full replacement of all our existing radio SCADAs on the sewer side. and this will add additional reporting sites as well. The end goal is to cover everything that has three-phase power. So, I mean, some people refer it to as the big 88, but this will be your lift stations and your bigger grinders that all have three-phase power. We talked about this a little bit earlier this year. The board approved purchase of 12 of these high tide units. Kind of gives us that remote monitoring by our phones, call outs. This is a good example. This one here is on Lazy Days Road, that new station that we just rehabbed this year. Shows you how your pumps are running, the depth of the wet well, estimated flows, peak flows, inlets, outlets, pump run times, anything that you'd, I mean, the basics of what you'd want to know what's happening to a station. It'll call out on any type of failure that you are watching the parameters on.
Hey, Zach, so we're using 51 high tides now, you're just asking for more of them, essentially?
We are using,
Right now, we're only using 21 high tides in the system. Then we have 50 or 44 of our three-phase panels are run off of a SCADA, which is radio. So
I
it's got
got you.
towers. So we're wanting to replace all the towers, get away from radio and go to cellular.
Well, this is essentially a tech upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
and then it adds some expansion too. So there are sites that aren't covered right now. And like Nathan says, he's added some this year too, you know, those ones that are deep in the woods, you know, that need that reporting. And I would say that's similar to our next item as well.
Hang on a second.
Yes,
Can
sir.
we take a pause for a minute? I've got some questions for Devin. On our sheets, there are hard-lined after the first 6, then the next 8, et cetera.
Yeah, that
Is there a reason why those were hard-lined?
It's just a format thing.
Okay.
No.
Well, my only concern with this is then we're being asked on a priority scale, personally, to rank things from 1 through 20. That's a lot of information to remember that we presented on a scale of 1 to 20. It would have been better if we had done these as rehabs on a scale by itself, or other options to scale by itself, because I'm already confused this far into it on, okay, 1 through 20 is a stretch for all of us, speaking on behalf of the board, to remember the priorities that Zach is discussing that he's bringing up, so.
I'm hoping that whenever his very last slide is again his list of
his rankings.
priorities, so hopefully
Correct.
that will
Yeah.
help you all.
I mean, I was going to personally lump all the rehabs into one kind of group. It's either going to be 6 through 11 or 1 through 5 or whatever, but
Well,
I
there's
think-
8 of them.
I think
why I was
that's
a little
really how we did
confused
it,
on-
too.
We are doing a 1 through 20 ranking, which seemed a little bit of a stretch.
yeah, it's a
That's just
stretch.
me.
Challenge.
Yep.
That's all. Thank you, Zach.
No, you're good. It was hard for us to kind of say which one's more important than which as well. This is 14, so assuming that we take over the state park, because of its remote access and it's the seasonal nature of the state park itself, we can't rely on flashing lights because of that. So we want to put high tides on those 14 stations that we will be taking over. This was recommended in the engineering report. It is a $70,000 cost to add 14 high tides to those current existing panels. This is an example of the one at Bluff and Ski where it shows there's a pump turned off. So it's not exactly, there's an issue with that. Someone showed that pump off, but everybody can pull that up and see, hey, that pump's off. The run times are down to 0. Just another example of what you can see, the guys can see on their high tide phones. Yes, sir.
So I'm a big fan of high tides, and my biggest concern for those out in the state park, tell me if I'm wrong, but don't they need cellular service to communicate?
They
My
do.
experience on a
SMS.
boat out in the state park is there ain't none, so.
I believe that they do also offer a satellite
Okay,
signal. I would have to check that, but I'm almost positive that they do a satellite signal for these remote. Because some of the places that people do put these are way out.
okay.
When we went over to Margaritaville, I feel like we spoke with someone on this because, and I feel like there was a satellite because I feel like I was talking to about like how the SEALs use those satellite phones. So I feel like you're right about that. But one other question, just to kind of, just more of a comment, but as Alderman Rucker wanted to look into what we're going to do with Lisi Fine and get all that data or input back before we sign off on it, Is upgrading to high tides part of that? Should they be upgrading that with high tides? Don't know. So
Negotiation.
could we find out about that too?
I'm sure we would find that information out before these expenses would happen. I'm thinking that's not going to take a couple months to get those answers, so.
Well, because I too am a big fan of high tides.
So this whole line item is contingent on our ownership of Lease C5. Mr. Dinsdale? Updates on timeframe?
Last information I got is, of course, it didn't make it into this year's legislature. So it still has to go through next year's legislature for the state to approve it.
And through which legislative session, the spring or the fall?
I believe it's going to be in the spring.
In the spring, okay. Just curious, because once again, this whole line item is contingent on our ownership, which I just want to get clarification that we will not even know that for several months.
Well, a lot of these
Correct.
questions can be answered from our city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
This is a maintenance program, cleaning CCTV, the east side. Pretty much pick up where we left off. The last efforts were around the Ozark Meadows, Lowe's area. We do have the equipment, but the current workload doesn't allow us to do it ourselves in-house. And this will just give us like, you know, your heads up, like, hey, there's an issue here, address this before it becomes a big problem kind of deal. Then the last when we went, they found manholes that we didn't know about and other issues that were uncovered. That was just nice to know. And you get a good cleaning on it and it all gets scrubbed out real nice. $100,000 allocated for that.
Zach, can you hold up for 1 second? I'm trying to look through yesterday's rankings on the CCTV and scanning on the other side.
Yes, sir.
To see where that fell. And I don't quite see it.
Some in water, wasn't it?
That's storm, okay, so just, once again, just cross-referencing, that ended up ranking 6th out of the 7 items in that category to CCTV, no, 5th on that side.
Yes, sir. That'd be your storm water.
And that was strictly just storm sewer water, okay. I'm just trying to, once again, place these
Yeah.
in some perspective. When we go back to the sewer systems, where that ranked, that's all. Just want to take a pause, thank you.
Number 14. Rank at 14. Wastewater master plan, similar to what we had done on the water side. This will give us a capital improvement plan. We'd like to focus on a grinder diet. So we know we got a big problem out there. The problem is all the stations that we have to manage. Are there areas in towns where we can reduce that? Can we set up gravity systems to get 7 grinders off the system, 8 grinders off the system, you know, replace a dozen of them with 1 duplex. So dozen simplexes gone, 1 duplex. That would be where we're looking to see that emphasis on that project go. Additionally, this would give us our level 1 assessment, which Raftellus recommended on their study for public works. $200,000. Good chunk of change. We also have big problems too on that side too, so it'd be good to get a good outside look at where our issues lie and if we can actually solve those by just, can we get rid of some of the stations that we have and consolidate large sections into one.
Real quick question. What does grinder diet mean?
And so you go to an area, so say down there on Timberlane, there's 7 or 8 grinder stations on that one little hill. Can we get 1 duplex down there at the bottom and take all of those to 1 station?
Okay.
Get rid of 7 simplexes for 1 duplex.
Okay.
Apex. Then these next 2 items are odor control. This is this 53-1, the one that we recently just purchased. We're looking to do, next 2 stations on the list would be 29-1 and 54-3. So Passover Roundabout and then Rockaway itself. Numerous odor complaints with both, some very recent. And that would do the same ozone fogging technology that we're currently using right now in the system. Yes, sir.
So your thoughts on how effective these are?
I think they're great polishers. I think they will finish. It's just a Band-Aid. We're trying to point treat a source just right there. We're just trying to contain the source. So I think it's as good as you can get it airlocked and keep that fog in there. You know, I mean, if it has anywhere to get out, it's going to get out. But as far as what we're doing, if we're just trying to point source treat them, where we can get that one site.
Because this ties into the next
Yeah.
the next slide. I was at Sergio's last night after the meeting,
Yeah.
and we caught some smell, and my wife the other night after a meeting texted me and said that it was terrible over by Andy's. Now, I haven't talked with anyone with Andy's, and I know that we never thought that this was going to be 100%, but if we got to 90% in your mind, I mean, you all maybe get calls, what,
Did
these
you,
are very
did you say last
expensive-
night you were, because the
Yes.
Vapex went down yesterday.
It did?
It blew a hose.
Okay.
And so I called them. I repaired the hose today, but we didn't get it put on. But they're supposed to send another one, so we'll get it working temporarily. But yesterday it could have been the day before. Yesterday morning we noticed it wasn't working.
And so as you state that it's a good polisher, I'm trying to, you all have been around this, especially Nathan, for so long. Did we solve 50% of our problem, 80% of our problem, 99% of our problem? What is your best assessment?
Guesstimate.
I would say 75 to 80.
Okay, well,
I'd
good.
say there's still room for improvement
With,
for the odor side of it. I
okay,
mean,
would that be
there's
some
still-
other system or through the Vapex itself?
I think the more that we run these and get to know, like Zach's saying, if you can't keep it contained, it can't treat what it leaves.
Wow.
That's what
That was a big discussion that I had with Dave Van Leer is that the Vapex guys said seal all the holes. And
Right.
Van Leer was like, you can't do that. That's just not going to work. And I just like, well, then you two need to talk, okay?
So I think it's doing what it's supposed to.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The Vapex that you were talking about, it did not get installed during the heat of the summer. And I think it was commented that that would be the real test when it's really hot and humid, if this is going to work. Well, we still don't know about that.
So the Sands has been there since March.
Yeah, it was before, I think it's ran all this summer.
Maybe March or
All
April.
summer.
It did?
Yeah, this one here, that's set,
The one at Rockwell?
the 53-1 is
Sands.
not connected. The
Oh,
one at
Behind
Sands.
okay,
Andy's.
okay.
Behind Andy's.
It was in March or April for sure.
I think we tried to get it in before, what is that, Labor Day or Memorial Day?
It was definitely.
I think we were trying to get it in before then.
It
Okay.
barely got in by Memorial Day or right after.
It was after.
The other one down at Cars,
Yes, ma'am, this one right here.
that's this one.
Yep.
Okay.
We gotta do the vacuum on the compressor for the.
Yeah, we're still waiting for an HVAC company to come down and hook the air up to it.
There's $100,000 in there for a company called Advanced Microbial Solution. This would be a system treatment. So we go out to the outskirts of the systems and we drip bacteria into it. These bacteria control the fog, your fats, oils, your greases. They eat it and clean the pipe. Along the way, we have aerators to keep them happy, to keep them from converting to going anaerobic. So you keep them aerobic to keep them from converting that H2S. So they eat and feed on the sewage system itself as they work through the pipe. Reduces or eliminates the H2S, which helps to eliminate our corrosion that we have. Could assist in treatment plant operations if we're sending them better sewage. Controls our fats, oils, and greases, and then the additional benefit would be extend our asset life. So those issues that we're seeing with the H2S corroding panels, hopefully we can reduce that. Valve vaults looking like they've been there for 300 years and they're only 20 years old, just getting that H2S down, not only for the smell, but to help us with the overall maintenance of the system. This system right here, that is Heron Bay.
That's off Nichols.
Heron Bay right off Nichols. That's where this is sitting right now. We are dripping bugs to test the system, which that one does hit Car Station too. So that's kind of where we were looking at going there, 53-1, and then out to Sands. But the $100,000 will be a system approach, treating the entire thing from the outskirts all the way in.
Say that again, please.
Yeah.
So you take bacteria on these totes.
No, you said the $100,000 would do what?
Treat the whole system. So we focus on the west side because that one's we can manage. We can monitor that one because it all hits one point at the sands. So we can know what the west side would be doing if we do 4 or 5 satellite spots. And then once we got a good handle on that, we'd expand it to the east side system. So putting 4 to 5 of these bacteria drips on each side
The 100,000 is for all of them or a piece?
is for setup for all of it.
So we
It's,
do that
it's about $5,000 a tote for the bacteria.
in lieu of another Vapex.
Right. We would like to try this before we bought the Vapex unit.
Because this here, whenever you drip it in this station, them bugs are growing in there. So you're, what was it,
2 billion CFU count or
2
whatever.
billion per
Oh,
like 20
20
minutes.
Yeah,
It
reproduce
creates
everything.
that many. So then as the pump turns on and shoots them down the line, any air release that it's hitting, you know, it's not going to be putting out the H2S. And the next station that dumps into, then it's going to be treating that one. And then as it goes from there, it's going to be treating that one. So like Zach's saying, if we can test it out on this side and it can go to the sands, that's our biggest issue. So it'll be a good test to see if it's going to work before we do both sides of town.
Right, because the challenge in all of this is that we're moving it for such a long distance.
Right.
Okay? And so my question is the $100,000, is that to test? And is that the first step of another 10 more $100,000 ones? Or is it like, gets us everything you think you need at least for the west side?
So that tote of bugs is $5,000. I think it was $5,700. I bought that one.
Some
So
high-dollar bugs, huh? Yeah.
$5,700, and it buys the aerator and it buys the tote. And that's the startup. That's what it is. And then every time that tote goes out, it's another $5,000. So to start up, I think he said we'd probably use 2 totes the first year just to get your bugs going. But then he said, you know, 1 tote would last a year. Because
So,
you turn
yeah.
it to, what is it, 1 gallon?
1 GPD.
Yeah, 1 gallon per day.
So I'm trying to do math in my head, but it seems like this is, if this is just as effective as Vapex, this is a more reasonable and cost-effective solution. Am I on the right track?
We think so,
Okay.
And a different type.
right.
Pardon me?
A different type of treatment too.
Different type of treatment, right?
Right,
not-
and so, you know, you're cleaning pipes,
Right.
you're reducing
I get
H2S
that.
the whole way. But yeah, so 100,000 to start up, $5,000 every time we gotta switch out a tote. So
Every time what?
we switch out one of these totes of bugs. So if we have 5 station or 6 stations, $30,000, maybe $58,000 annually to maintain those bugs.
Okay, so it's 1 tote per station.
Right.
Per year.
Right.
Okay.
Can these not be used in conjunction?
Yeah, we're using them in conjunction right now.
Because it
So-
says pick one only.
Well, it's as far as if you want to spend money to buy 2 more Vapexes or try this, the bacteria.
Oh, I see what you're, but, so you want to try this, and then if we want to add the Vapex later, we could add the Vapex later. It's not going to hinder us from doing that.
No, and he even said, you know what, if there is some H2S that gets past these bugs, then that Vapex is like Zach said earlier, like a polisher. So whatever's getting ready to come out, it's going to catch it in the air. Because
Okay,
the bugs are going to be in the, well, they can work together.
So you want to try it on the west side, and then are you going to implement it on the east side too, assuming it works?
Yes.
So
For
let's
that-
do
for that
that,
100,000.
hold off on the Vapex is what you're suggesting.
Right.
I got you, okay.
Last item on the list, this goes in conjunction with painting the force mains underneath the Grand Glaze. This would be $187,000 to just check the condition of it. So maybe a phased approach, check the condition 1 year, paint them the next year or the following year. But we'd really like to see what that condition of those pipes looks like before we actually spend that $300,000 to paint them. I mean, it may not be, one may be good, one might be bad, both are good. It's just kind of one of those, we don't want to put lipstick on it and it just end up failing. The bottom would be an ultrasonic pig. The top one would just be a camera and the look. So obviously the lower one would be like slightly more expensive just because of the technology. The upper one would be cheaper, but maybe give us less indication of what's going on in that pipe. Department rankings. We So the wastewater master plan, we ranked number 1, 4th from the bottom.
Is that in order of this?
It's not in order.
So if you want to go,
What's on the screen is correct.
Can you
Yeah, well,
just
we
tell
can't
us,
see that or what's
based
on
on
the
this, what-
computer either, so.
right, so if you want to go in order, 16, 13,
Hold on, hang on.
all right, so I'll read them out too.
You're starting at the top, right?
Yeah.
Golf use sewer main would be 16.
Yeah.
The compact wheel loader would be 13. The F-550 would be 9. 1227 Darwin would be 17. Paint the sewer main would be 18. Rockaway is 19. KK 37 is 4. 30-5 is 2. 29-5 is 8. 30-1 is 7. 4235 is 5. 29-1 is 6. Rockaway Reline is 3. The 51 High Tides is 11. The 14 State Park High Tides is 15. Clean and CCTV is 14. Wastewater Master Plan is 1. VAPEX is 20. Advanced Microbial is 10. And Ductile Iron Main Inspection is 12.
Same thing I had.
Easy.
So I just have one question. I don't really understand the objectives of the wastewater master plan, okay? If it's to reevaluate the existing system versus potential growth that everybody seems to be so worried about that I'm not as worried about. So can you give me just a little bit more what the top 2 or 3 objectives are?
Right. This is what we go through there and give these lift stations every year, and it's based on, headaches or feelings. I think as far as can we get a condition assessment? Can we go through all these stations and see which ones truly are the worst? Can we look at them unbiasedly? Just not the ones that we hate, but can we go through and say, okay, that we have all of these stations. We need to replace 6 a year or 7 a year, and this is how we do that over a 20-year period so that we're always rotating these assets. That would be huge for us. And so it's just similar to the pavement maintenance plan. Bam, bam, bam. Those are the ones we do every single year. They're known, they're staged, and we can keep just rotating them every 20 to 30 years. That's the replacement cycle. And then I think a lot of this town just got slapped with simplex station, simplex station, simplex station, where grinders in certain, gravity systems in certain areas going to duplexes would be huge too. So one of the major problems I feel like we have is so many stations, and can we reduce that number of stations down? Can we get rid of 100 of them? Can we get rid of 200 of them? Or what's the cost to get rid of 200 of them? I guess that would be the question.
Okay.
You got anything
And so
else you wanna say?
without going too deep and you want to take it to another place, do we allow simplex stations in our design guidelines?
Oh, yeah.
Should we?
Up to 2 homes can go to a simplex, I believe, is the rule.
I'm not convinced we should, but okay, another time. Thank you.
Zach, I just want to say a couple of things. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you're the cancer doctor that delivers the bad news.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy, and I appreciate that, and hopefully you don't take it personal with some of the information and stuff. We have been reactive too long. This board has wanted to be proactive, and we have now some staff that's willing to be proactive and willing to bring the bad news and willing to go out there and look at and find it, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you guys feel like you have ownership. That's what you're telling me. And so hopefully we can do whatever we can to support you as much as we can, and the information you bring is not stuff I like to hear, but again, I appreciate the fact that you're doing this and bringing some of the bad news that we need to hear and need to deal with. So thank you.
Thank you.
One last, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had 2 comments. First of all, I wanted to commend both of you gentlemen on the amount of work that went into culling all the information to present this to the board. It's a lot to digest as far as numbers and information. One takeaway from all this, and I was hoping maybe something we can address in future discussions, on all of the lift station rehabs, we are spending $130,000 on engineering. I feel like there should have been, or we should possibly discuss further some options or alternatives because that's $130,000 for 6 projects for lift station rehabs or upgrades. And that to me seems a little out of line for what is being proposed. I think everybody else on the board would agree that that's a lot of money on just engineering services.
That master plan may help us identify that, Bob. If that master plan tells us these are some of the things that we need to be doing, we might be able to forecast the fact of the amount of engineering we need in 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years and realize that we can justify however many people to support that. That may be
Anyway,
valuable.
that was just a takeaway in the discussions of the lift stations when I kept looking at all the engineering costs, thinking, surely there's got to be some alternatives that we could do some of this in-house, et cetera, et cetera. But that's further discussions. But anyway, thank you.
Well, Bob, that's where I was going to go also. I totaled them up as you were, right before you said that, for the total, $177,500 in engineering costs. And
New truck.
that's not a bad salary for 2 people in-house. And it'd be nice to bring them in here.
I was just looking at just the lift station upgrades. That's what 130,000, not quite, it was 128. But
Yes, sir.
I think 2 things. One of the challenges we have was this huge opportunity around engineering in-house in the city. And as much as I don't like to be, and I'm not instinctively patient, we're going to have to be. And I don't see how the wastewater plan is going to affect much of this engineering unless we just completely hold off designing any of these projects until we get the master plan done, which will probably be towards the end of next year. So that's just something you guys are going to have to figure out. We can talk about other options as far as in-house. But I just want to say this, bottom of my heart, I feel much better about our public works and especially our sewer system than I've ever felt since I know since I've been on this dais and possibly since I've been involved at all. You guys are to be commended, and both of you. I mean, you guys work well together. I know you do. You guys know each other for a while, and Nathan, you've been around a while. And this approach that you guys are taking, sure, you're going to learn some things. It may not be perfect. Where nobody's perfect. But you guys are doing a much better job, and I feel like we're in good hands. Finally, thank you.
Very good.
Well said.
Alderman Hoffman.
Echo everything he just said. You guys really have done a bang-up job. Is LS 30-5, is that KK?
No.
no, 4235.
30-5 is the Land's End
Land's
lift
End?
station.
Where?
Okay, oh, I see. Okay.
Land's End.
Okay.
Okay.
Just, is there a reason that is it just in worse shape? The KK one sounds really bad to me because it's going right underneath RVs. That's really not good.
Well, yeah, well, we've spent all the engineering already for the 30-5 and it's ready for construction in 25. That's why it was ranked higher, where the KK 37 is engineering in 25.
Oh, I see,
so-
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
All right. We'd like to thank you guys as well. Picture of the new service bed you bought for the old Foreman truck. That is the Lazy Day station that was rehabbed this year. There's the transfer pump, and those pictures of both are the transfer pump right there, so. All good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Look at you buttering us up. Look at all the great things we've got.
doesn't hurt.
Thanks to you guys.
Very good.
Okay, would you guys like to take a little, let's make it maybe a 10-minute break?
No, you don't want-
15.
15?
Is it really going to 20 or is it going to be 20?
We're about 15 minutes
15.
behind my schedule right now. so.
All right, little break till 5:30, sound good, folks?
4:30?
4:30, yes.
4:30.
Okay.
Yeah, please don't say 5:30.
Are we still supposed to rank these right now? Or
Yes.
right this minute?
Yes.
right, Devin Lake.
All right, so we are going to, does somebody have the clicker that I can use, or they can do it for me?
Is Celeste still on?
I don't know.
Thank you. He's gonna message her.
Hey, real quick, Devin, did
Yes.
Celeste was asking for their rankings?
I just emailed her
Gotcha.
those.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Good.
Okay. All right. So next we're going to move into personnel. So CBIZ's recommendation was for a 3.3% premium and a 4.7% merit raise for a total of 8%. Our recommendation is to do the following: a 2.5% premium, increase the city's 401A contribution from a 6% to 7%, also increase the city's 457 match from 3 to 4% if the employee chooses to raise their contribution to 4%. And then the merit raise schedule, depending on what quartile you're in, the range for.
She's got to turn hers.
So that's when you mute, please.
There you go.
Okay. Depending on what quartile you're in, if you meet expectations, it would be a total of a 7 to an 8.5% raise, and if you're clearly outstanding, it's an 8 to a 9.5% raise altogether. Looking to see if this is agreeable to the board, or if you'd like to make any changes, adjustments to what we have proposed.
Alderman Osteen, yes, sir.
So the premium basically, I look at that as a cost of living.
Correct.
I look at that as basically a cost of living increase.
Yes.
The recommendation is 3.3, we're stating 2.5, national average is 3%. So why is the reason we would go under what is considered a standard cost of living increase through multiple avenues?
So the 2.5% plus the 1% for the 401A contribution is actually greater than the 3.3.
Did you say the national was 2?
3.
Oh, okay, okay, I thought you said
So
2. My
the
hearing aid,
the
sorry.
recommendation is 3.3, national average is what is one would consider a cost of living increase, annual increase is 3. We're recommending, staff recommending 2.5, that seemed, say suspect, but I'm not sure why we wouldn't be keeping up with national averages as far as cost of living increases. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, if you take the cost, if you take the cost of living and the average merit that we look historically, wouldn't that probably generate, or what would it generate, Maddie?
To piggyback off of that, this is picking me up. Can you all hear me okay?
Not very well.
Not very well. So
Microphone over here.
I'm using the microphone.
No, you can't, that one's not as good as a handheld.
Oh, we have that 2.5%. We have the 1% increase for. Technical difficulties. So yes, the national average is that 3.3%. We are doing the 2.5% with that city contribution increase from 6 to 7, as well as that match increase. Just doing that city 401A contribution from 6 to 7, we are creating more of an increase long-term for our people because we are putting that into a retirement vehicle. It is going to accrue interest. It's going to grow for them more than just a paycheck percentage would in that sense. We are also giving them that opportunity to increase their own match to their 457 account with an extra 1% put into their 401A on our part, which if they do max out their 457 match, they'd be sitting at a 15% retirement contribution every paycheck.
I understand the math, but a lot of this, looking at the numbers though, is subjective based on the employee's willingness or whether they're contributing to those programs or are matched to a different program, et cetera. So a basic standard line employee that is not paying into a 401K or the 401A, et cetera, they're still, we're looking at just basically 2.5%.
That
Cost of
401A
living.
contribution is automatic for all
Okay.
employees.
So that's a 1% theirs.
Right, so they'd be at 3.5%
Okay.
just at that.
And just in response to, during the loggers talk, you all had, talked about maybe raising the 401A, months ago. And so when we got this recommendation from CBIZ and we recalled that, you were interested in maybe bumping up the retirement, we had to do kind of a trade-off there to hopefully, meet what the board had mentioned at that time and still fall within the CBIZ recommendation too. So that's how we were looking at it during the staff meetings.
Okay, well, I personally am all about the what can you count on as far as a raise? And that is your
I'm
cost of
sorry.
living increase.
I didn't hear you. What'd you say,
I
Bob?
understand.
I said, I personally am all about the across-the-board cost of living increase. If the national average is 3 to 3.3 and we're going at 2.5, we're trying to offset that with other contributions, though, I still think we should be looking at more of the front end across-the-line increase for cost of living, as opposed to trying to offset that with greater percentages through 401K matches, et cetera, et cetera. That's just me personally.
Question is all right, you're saying that what you're suggesting here is the 2.5, and I understand the retirement program. What historically is, and maybe it's up there and I just can't read it, but what historically is the merit raise? Has the merit rate been historically 3%?
When we were looking at it, it's hard to gauge because you guys had a significant merit premium increase the last few years due to COVID, is what I was able to find in our past years.
Okay, because I felt like in years past, we've always been told that historically, the merit raise has been a certain amount. I know there's a range, and we're not asking for each individual person, but if the range is 0 and the top is 5%, we're somewhere probably above, we're usually above, the average that our people are getting.
That board premium rate, that one is the flat 2.5%, and it would be that flat 1% added on to that currently 6% city contribution to the 401A program. Where that variance comes into play is with their performance evaluations. So, they could get anywhere, like Devin was saying, up to that 9.5%, depending on their quartile and their performance rank.
I'd like to see the dollars and paycheck guaranteed. That's my concern. I understand all that. I do believe that I support the retirement program. I go back in history to show that. But I guess I'm along with Bob in the fact that, the CPI is at 3.5% or 3%. And my other comment along that 3.3%, do we know where he captures his numbers at?
That's CBIZ basing their data off of national values. I believe they pulled, oh gosh, what was it?
I guess where I'm looking at, and because I'm very familiar with Social Security, because I am on Social Security, and I know how they captured the number. I've also been down the same road with our sewer plant treatment people, because that's how they capture their number on how the raises in the fee that they charge, et cetera, et cetera. And you've got to be careful with the fact that, are you going back, are you going from September 1 of this year to September 1 of last year? Where are you capturing that amount, for that 3.3%? Because I know that I've just been down this road, and from September 30th to October 1st, September 30th to October 1st of this year for our area, it's 2.5%. That's why I questioned the 3.3%. You know, where are they getting theirs? Because that's kind of where you're, I mean, I realize you're taking and
Right.
listening to them.
Which
So
I know they pulled multiple labor division polls. I don't recall them off the top of my head.
I can just tell you the Midwest, and I could go, I've got it at home, but the CPI numbers for the Midwest, for our region and everything is just from September 30th to November or October 1st is 2.5%. So I would be in support of the 2.5% unless there's some way or another they can show me why the 3.3 is what has really been going on. And that's where I think Bob is coming from. But if we can justify, if I can justify my own mind and it's only been 2.5%, I'm in favor of it. That's where I'm kind of wondering, you know, what's the benchmark? Because I know each year you want to use the same benchmark to go back.
Right.
And we you know, what benchmark have we used?
And I've been piecing it together from multiple people doing this budget, so I'm
And I
not quite sure
understand
what it's
that's-
been consistently based off
That's
of.
the challenge.
Yeah, I have to pull it.
So, so I have some questions. First of all, CBIZ. CBIZ is a different organization than we've used in the past, is that right? They're the same folks?
Yeah, it's been the same from what I've seen.
I'm sorry?
It's been the same from what I've seen historically, looking through all the past.
I just don't recall
years.
that name, so I wasn't sure. And I'm not so, if they were different, I didn't know about what they might be better. I've always had some concerns with some of their leveling and salaries within grade levels. The premium, I'm just going to say this, and I know it's not going to be popular, especially in this room. But whether I'm consistently wrong, at least I'm consistent. I believe that if we're going to do a premium, that premium should be weighted for levels 9 and below, because that's where our turnover is, okay? We've always had that discussion. I'll probably lose again. But we need to find a way to impact and there's other ways to impact it too. It's a team approach, for lack of a better term, but we continue to struggle with staffing at our lower levels, okay? Yeah, there's different ways to do that. If you want to change salary ranges, okay, so be it. But at the end of the day, the premium of 2.5% or 3.3% across everything, I have a concern with, because I don't think it addresses some of our needs. But to piggyback onto that, it looks like we're changing and I'm going to call it I call it a compa ratio, but that's your little chart down below here, okay? And it feels like, and tell me if I'm wrong, I hope I am, that we are, for lack of a better term, we are incorporating an annual cost of living into our salary structure that we've never had before. Am I misunderstanding that?
The chart there is only for the performance evaluation portion of the.
Okay, but it's got, so I'd have to go back and look, and I've got it somewhere, but it looks like you've incorporated the premium into those percentages. Is that correct?
No.
No, that's outside of the premium.
The total raise, a column on the far right does incorporate. That's just to give you an idea of what the total raise would be for somebody. But the quartile percentages do not include the 2.5% premium.
Okay, so that did not change? The quartiles did not change the percentages in the quartiles? For the, so a meets expectation in quartile 1 has always been 4%, as far as you all know?
No, that has changed.
No, that's changed.
Okay, so why did it change?
It's changed off and on for years, you know, as they've done, it's been different. We couldn't locate last year's, if I remember right, during the meeting, right?
Correct.
But we looked at all the previous years.
I don't believe that's ever changed. What we've changed is the premium, or it introduced a premium at one point.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. We found the documentation on it. Now, we used to have more levels, you know, there used to be in between meets, and clearly there was exceeds expectations. And then I think there was another level in between there at one point or several years ago, but, because we used to have 5, now we've narrowed that down to 3. I think we had 4 last year. But then the percentages have also changed over the quartiles throughout the years, especially in recent years,
Okay.
not counting the premium.
We've made some changes in the quartiles because it was identified certain quartiles were needed to be bumped up, and there's been some adjusting on that in the quartiles over the years.
Okay. I don't recall that. I don't really have a concern with the 3% match going to 4%. I'd go 6, even higher. But the 6 to 7 is nice. I will just say that as I talk to folks out there, that they're impressed that we give 6, to be quite honest, up front. So that could go either way. I think to Kevin's point, though, I'll just say this all looks real good, except there's dollars involved, okay? And we're assuming growth rates, and if we start, for lack of a better term, start regularly having personnel merit increase rates at a rate of 7 to 10%, I'm not convinced that we're going to see income growth rates or revenue growth rates at that level. That's my biggest concern. That's all I have.
Alderman Osteen.
All right, so in my mind, the bottom line is, for all of our employees, it's going to come down to, how does this affect my direct paycheck? I mean, it's great that we're increasing our 401A contributions, the 457 match, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, that's obviously huge benefits for a lot of our staff. Not all the staff, but for a lot of the staff. But at the end of the day, I think when we talk about annual increases to income and salaries, the line level employee is going to say, how does that affect my paycheck? So I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, Maddie, and you can just ballpark some numbers here. So we've got 110 employees, 112. How many exactly?
128 last I counted.
128. Can you ballpark what is the average salary for our employees?
I mean, that's all over the place. I can't really give you an exact number.
I was just
Or a
trying to do
ballpark,
some
really.
line level math. If that's 40,000, is that 50,000?
I mean, we have multiple employees that are within a level 7 pay grade compared to 3 at a level
Correct.
13.
I was just going for just an average. And I'm just going to pull some numbers out of my, well, whatever, out of thin air. So for, let's say if that benchmark is $50,000 in annual salary, basically that means a 2.5% increase
$1,000
is $1,250. You divide that by 52 payroll weeks, that basically means their average paycheck is going to increase pre-tax $24. So what they're going to see, but basically bottom line, if you back out, usually it's 30% tax withholding, $15 per week additional income. When I break it down to those numbers, that to me seems very sad. That's just me personally, because at the end of the day, for all employees, it's not how much are you contributing to the 401k or the 401a. Yes, that's still benefits, that's still income down the line for them. To me, it comes down to, how does this directly affect my paycheck every pay period? And if that's basically going to be after tax $30, that seems like a pittance.
To speak
I'm
somewhat
just trying to do just some basic math here.
To speak somewhat candidly, I've sat in on a lot of interviews so far for the city in my 6 months here. And part of my coming to the city, I wasn't coming for the paycheck and the position I came into. I was coming for the benefits package.
Benefits and the opportunity.
And a big part of that was the retirement package.
And once again, that is you singular though, and I'd like to think that's the majority of our employees, but my gut feeling tells me that's not the incentive that drives most people to take jobs within the city. It's not the benefits package, it is the pay, it is the paycheck. So anyway, I personally am against the 2.5. I think we should go up to the 3 or to 3.3. Yes, it's in the big scheme of dollars, it's not a huge increase, but if we can at least get them a few more dollars every month in their pocket, that speaks volumes to our employees. But that's me personally.
I would say that my biggest issue here is the fact that it's not going to be accepted well when our consulting firm is saying 3.3. I disagree with that, what they're saying. I think they're wrong. But I'd like to know where they're getting their data from.
Yeah.
Because when they are saying this 3.3, the employees are going to say, well, they're saying it was 3.3 and they only gave us 2.5.
Correct.
It does. It looks bad. I go back to what I've done within the last 15 days, matter of fact, week and a half. My research says it's 2.5% from in the last 12 months as of the 1st of October. That's what my research does. And that's based on, again, I would be more than happy to provide everybody with where I got that, the labor statistics, Midwest, Missouri Division, blah, 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 urban area, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's the number I can hang my hat on that I feel is what the CPI has been. Has that been the same stuff and information that was used in prior years? I don't know, and that's not fair if it wasn't, you know, but if it wasn't, okay. But moving forward, I would like for us to establish a benchmark so that we can say, this is the benchmark that our employees in this area have seen a cost of living increase in it, at least whatever it is, and then at least we have something to justify it. I want to see more than cost of living, you know, especially as Alderman Ross said, you know, we did identify certain categories of our employees that we feel or I feel are below what they should be at. And that's where I would support more, but how much more? Now I have to put my other hat on. I have to answer to my citizens out there, to my voters, and be able to say to them, this is why we did this, this is why it's more. Again, it gets back to the benchmark. And
Yeah, but I think most of the constituents that we have, though, they're seeing a standard 3 to 3.3 on their current lines of work or whatever they're employed, or if it's pension or retirement, et cetera. So us bumping the 2.5 to 3.3, I don't think people are going to blink an eye at that, because that is standard across the board state average. And I can pull information off the top of my head off this, because my sister and brother-in-law both work for the University of Missouri. They get the same 3% every year as cost of living increase. That's the largest employer in the state of Missouri. So
there's not
I
been a
understand the
3% increase in
benchmarks.
cost of living in the last number of years. That's not a good
Those are
number.
merit.
That's again where I disagree with that, because again, let's go back to the benchmark.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So I do have CBIZ's letter pulled up in front of me. So their structure update recommendation was that 3.3%. They were pulling from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Employment Cost Index, measuring wage growth over the prior 12 months. That was as of September 4th when they sent me the letter. The relevant data in their recommendations comes from the reported wages and salaries data for civilian workers, which is 4.2% from the June 2024 report. They also considered the World at Work 2024-2025 salary budget survey. That current survey reported an overall average structure update of 2.4%. So basically, their recommendation was just an average between those two amounts.
The Department, if I can ask a question on that, the Department of Labor Statistics, is that dialed down into, you can get information, I don't know what all information, all the way down to Camden County,
That
Or is
one,
that-
I believe they were just basing it off of the national average.
a national average?
Yeah, see, and that's why I was saying,
Right.
what I dialed down to, I didn't dial down all the way to Camden County, but I dialed down all the way to Missouri with what I've just reported. That's what I did based on some work I've been doing with the sewer board. It was dialed down to Missouri, and that's where the 2.5%.
Alderman Hoffman.
Would it not be, to address the quartile issue that Alderman Ross brought up, could we not do 3.3 for the first and second quartiles and then a 2.5 for quartile 3 and 4?
Sure.
It's possible. I mean, that's up to us.
I mean, it just, that seems to kind of address all the issues that I just heard, just shooting from the hip.
The only thing I would say to that is, I don't have a problem with that split. I don't have a problem with a split, but I think the lowest split should be the cost of living. And I would have, only reason I agree with 2.5 is because my little statistical stuff that I've done to Missouri says 2.5. You know, we have to be ready to explain to those people why we want 2.5 when the national is supposedly 3.3, and that's where I think we need, I can explain it because I can just simply say the national is 3.3 and that's wrong. We should be using what is our local area. And I think the 2.5 is what we should be using as our base. Going above that to go to the other folks would be why I could support what you've said, not based on the fact that the national is 3.3. The Missouri, and I'll be happy to do all my homework here and bring that link, send it to you guys, but the Missouri CPI for urban is 2.5%. So I can support it, but maybe not for the same reason that some of the other ones can.
So what is the next step?
I make a motion if we want to have a discussion that
So
way.
do we, do,
Can't do motions, this was only a discussion.
Okay, so that's how we've done in the past, so, in some of this stuff. I'll just say this, I would fully support 4% for levels 9 and below, and 2.5% for all levels above 9, 10 and above.
I agree.
So I don't know if that needs a vote or what,
can you-
but somehow we got to come to a consensus.
Can you say that again, please?
4% for levels 9 and below, and 2.5% for levels 10 and above.
And you're referring to the premium, not
Referring to the premium only.
premium only.
sorry. I support that because one of the biggest issues we've always had every year at these budget sessions is those lower quartiles. How do we get those on par with averages where they should be? And I think we've been behind the gun, which is why we had some drastic increases in, I think, 2021, I think.
21 and 22.
And 22, when we made some, I think the total package increase was like at 11%. Because the quartiles told us that we were way under what we should be paying for our staffing in those quartiles. So I strongly support the larger increase for those lower quartiles or pay levels, as Richard has.
I would support it, and I will be sending all of you why I believe 2.5% is Missouri's cost of living, so we can show to our employees that are only getting 2.5%, they are getting cost of living. 3.3 is not cost of living for the state of Missouri. I know
So-
we're not voting, but this is just.
This
give
is,
staff
this
some
is a
direction.
workshop.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how, just giving them some opinions.
To clarify, are we wanting to adjust the percentages given for the merit raises down? If you leave it the way it is, if you were in a quartile 1, clearly outstanding, you would have an 11% raise? Or do you want to take those down 1%?
That is similar to what we did in 2021 and 2022.
I'm sorry, I'm trying, clearly out, can we go back through that again so I can
Yep.
understand
Clarify
what you
what you
said?
said again.
Yeah, so clearly outstanding in quartile 1 is a 5% merit increase,
Correct. And if you were a
And a
level
4
9 or below, that would be another 4%.
which is 9.
9, and then we're doing 1% 401A and a 1% match.
Okay, well, that's separate. We're talking about salaries to me, but that's okay. That's how I was trying to figure out how
Okay,
you got
so-
to the math.
Yep.
Okay? But yes, I'm okay with 9% increase for somebody that's clearly outstanding in quartile 1. I don't think we probably should have 10% of the people that are clearly outstanding, to be quite honest, from a bell curve standpoint, but it meets expectations. Somebody that's doing a good job in levels, what do we have, start at 6 to 9? That would mean that they would have an 8% merit increase,
Correct.
or adjustment and merit increase combined.
Correct.
All right, I'm comfortable with that, I believe.
Rest of the board comfortable with that moving forward?
I think we need to see what the numbers look like, but some direction.
Can somebody direct,
Not a vote yes or no,
can
just
somebody
a-
direct Celeste and see if she's got
information.
comments or feedback?
Celeste, can you hear us?
Unmute.
Unmute.
Oh. I'm just asking because we all seem on board. I just wanted to get Celeste's opinion as well.
Nod your head yes that you're on board, or no that you're not. I'm real good with that.
It's not a vote, she'll be able to vote when we have the official portion of it.
Okay.
Can I potentially piggyback on that with another question? In that regard of keeping those people under level 9 happy and not turning over, what about those incoming into those positions with where we have our salaries banked from minimum to maximum within those? Because if we're increasing by 4% potentially for those that have been in the position for a while, those coming into the position are going to come in at a substantially lower rate.
Well, I think we need to
I'll be
raise
glad
the
to address
premium, the 4%. The
Like raise
base
the actual
level
pay
has to
levels
raise
have to go
4%.
by 4%?
Yep.
Okay. So we're looking at doing a 4% for the
Yep.
6 to 9 on the actual pay scale, as well as the 2.5 for those over
Yeah,
level
because
9.
that's a cost of living premium
Okay.
raise, yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
So if I heard, just to make sure I heard what I said, the premium amount, which is depending on whether it's 2.5 or 4, depending on the grade level.
Correct.
Will move the grade level minimums
Up.
up and maximums up.
Correct.
Very good.
Okay.
All right.
Moving along. So these are the proposed new positions. Each of the department heads will speak to their specific. First up will be Ron for the janitor.
That makes sense.
Thank you, Board. Suspect. Okay, hi. Couldn't hear myself. Yeah, so over the years, we have had outside janitorial services. Our services have had ebbs and flows. This year, I've received more support in taking a look at possibly obtaining a full-time janitor to keep in our building 8 to 5, and this is just for City Hall. This was not for Public Works or airports. I just wanted to run this past you guys, see if this is something that you would be interested in. We currently use the outside, as the slide says, outside contract is a little over $40,000. I have received another bid for the same type of services from a little larger company, and that was, we discussed a couple of different options. The current service that we have right now would push $60,000 with added services going up to about 65. So 60 would cover what we've got right now. I contacted other building departments, other cities, I should say, that I have contact with as through the Missouri Association of Building Code Administrators, and asked if they had full-time janitors. Those that did, their average or their starting salaries were around $19 an hour for the janitors, and what we are proposing is a little less than that. But if they were to reach that midway in the quartile, we'd be right on track with what the Missouri, I would say, average is. I did also pull some average data for Missouri through Indeed and a couple other sources, but that's my proposal for that. I'd sure like to see, I'd like to have the chance to have a full-time janitor so that we have a little better control rather than going through a management company to speak to their employees on issues that we have. And Mike Welty and I managed the contract for years. Mike took more of a lead role. I had it for years prior to Mike. I always tell everybody around City Hall, if you have any issues, be sure to email me because I need that data to support any changes that we might make, or if we need to cancel a contract, and that has happened in the past. Entertain any questions.
Alderman Hoffman?
When the service that comes in now, is it usually just one person?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Just seems like a big job for one person, all of City Hall. But
When I first started here, the janitorial services it was conducted typically by 2 or more people, and they covered the entire City Hall, meaning that in my office, if I wanted my office cleaned, I would leave the door open. They would come in, dust off the desk, the keyboards, vacuum, change my trash. Whenever we hit 2008, 2009, we were looking for low-hanging fruit, and the board's direction at that time was, what minimum services can we get away with? So we reduced that contract to include only public areas. They will sweep and mop the lobby, the lobby restrooms, any of the meeting rooms, the hallway that goes around administration, for example, but any of the carpeted areas over by finance, by city clerk, by the building department, city planner, we vacuum those, we dust those areas ourselves.
I got you. Okay, thanks.
And everybody takes their own trash out.
And just, I think everybody knows this, but that would already go up 4%, correct? Okay.
So this doesn't include the benefits package, correct? That dollar amount that's laid there?
Correct. Yeah, that's just the
Okay.
salary.
So you can add another 10 or 12% at least on, well, you're going to add 15 or 20% on top of that. So do we have concerns with the current?
Yes.
Okay.
We've had concerns with every contractor we've ever had. They start out strong and then it falls off.
Are we proposing to do because I think we do have something at airports at least. I don't know about Public
Yes.
Works.
Airports.
So how would that be affected, if at all?
I've never managed those contracts, only City Hall. So this was my suggestion for City Hall.
So just for my information, who does manage those? Ty and Zach do it? They just show up. Nobody manages them? Is that what I think I hear?
Yeah, correct. We were always,
Keeping that same, who is it? Would we be keeping the same company?
Yeah, oh, it's the same company now, yes.
Oh, okay, so
But-
we're just going to limit their services to public works and airports, is that what I think I'm hearing?
If they're happy with their services, then that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I don't know the level of service that they're getting at their buildings.
You guys can figure that out. Just was trying to understand the strategy and the plan. Thank you.
So do we think that one employee can handle City Hall? So is there enough, is there 40 hours worth of work here?
Absolutely.
Is there more?
I couldn't tell you for sure. I'm not in the janitorial services business, but I do know that we could keep them busy for 40 hours because there are things that aren't getting done that could be done, especially whenever we're talking about those community areas, the bathrooms, the deep down cleans that don't get done, the stripping of wax, the reapplying of layers of wax to do the buffing and maintaining the floors. Yeah.
So in other words, it's really not fair to compare this to what's being done dollar-wise, because what you're wanting to get, what you're expecting to get done with this employee is more than what we're getting done with the contract. So
I think that's fair,
So when
yeah.
we say that, you know, it's we're estimating 40,000, and we're estimating that, or you're estimating 30-some thousand, excuse me, and it's costing us 40, that's really not a good comparison, because you're going to get a whole lot more done.
So our current contract is 40,000 with the outside janitor. I think if we get a full-time employee with benefits, so we're saying what, 20% on top of that, then we're pushing that 40,000 for our full-time. And I think we'll get more done for that.
Okay, that's what I'm,
And with the direct management availability, I think I can be more efficient in that manner.
all right. I would say that, okay, that's the plus side, because it was sounding like it was going to be a negative to move to a full-time employee.
So
I just wanted to clarify that.
Can I ask a question to you? I was just, how often do they do City Hall, the outside services now?
Sharing a mic with you. The outside services right now, we have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule where they do the entire building, you know, the community areas. Tuesday, Thursday, they come in and do just the lobby bathrooms, PD hallway, the officers area. I believe that's it. So they're here every day? They're here every day, yeah.
Conference room.
They should be here every day.
So, two quick comments. One, anything that we consistently need and hire out, I think we're leaving money or performance, if not both, on the table. So I support this. But I ask, tongue-in-cheek, I ask one thing. Can they please not roll that loud dolly out about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the middle of a meeting on Thursday night? If you can make that happen, we'll probably all be happy.
Yes, sir, I'll see that that's taken care of.
Thank you.
I would just go one more step and say, maybe we use this as a step one, but I would like to see, including all city facilities, that we be under us. That means we have to have, you know, an employee and a half or 2 employees, et cetera. But I think that that would be, if this is, I would support this with the hopes that we'd be able to expand it to include all of our buildings.
I would be happy to research that and work with airports and public works. And who knows what next year may bring, finding the right employee and somebody who's really getting after it. Maybe they would have time. I just don't know. But if they didn't, yeah, another half or, you know, part-time to where 2 guys can work on, or 2 ladies, however it may be, can work on the stripping and waxing of floors and the buffing, and then also go, you know, half a day here, half a day at the other buildings.
I have one comment that's totally the wrong time to bring this up, but what Alderman Ross just said, and Tara, you could probably answer this. I've wondered this for 2 years now. Why can't we shut that door? I know it's an open meeting, but why can't we say the meeting's in process, door is open, put a sign on it, and shut that door?
You can shut it as long as it's unlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that should be every meeting, because so many times they do go away, or we have a meeting and people get up and leave, half of them, and then we gotta wait till, so just a sidebar, but
No, we can shut it as long as it's unlocked. You can close any door you want.
wrong time to bring it up, but always wondered.
Sometimes your brain clicks in.
And I would forget. Thank you.
So next is Zach to talk about his added positions requested.
Haven't you gotten enough?
Yeah, I have. So based on the Public Works assessment, they did recommend a Public Works Director, additional secretary, 2 water technicians, and 2 sewer technicians, their respective pay levels there, which would add 6 individuals. All right, yeah, so I want to know.
So I've had enough discussion about this with Raftellus and other folks. I just want to make sure this is clear. These are the public, let's just start with the Public Works Director. It's an additional position, and I do not support it.
I don't support it either.
Well, thank you. I don't see why we would have a Public Works Director managing, visually from a org chart, it makes no sense.
Yep.
And so I don't know what we do, and that'll be your decision. I do think the Public Works Director should be an appointed position if we move that way to elevate this position. So I don't know if we're going to not have a Public Works Director or we're not going to have a Public Works Operations Manager, but I don't support either one. And everybody else may disagree, so I may be wrong, but as far as the Public Works Department Secretary, I don't support that either.
Okay.
Alderman Ross brought up one point that I think I would like for us to put on a future agenda discussion. I don't think we need to get into it here, and that is, we always say, is it a appointed position or not? And I think I would like to see us have that discussion at a future point to delve into it, basically because one side of me says none of these people need to be appointed, and the other side of me says they need to be appointed. So I have pros and cons on both ways, but if you take and put somebody into the position of being in charge of all of Public Works,
But you got there, boss.
you know, why do they have to be appointed? Why don't they have to be? And anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think that's an issue we need to get out on the table, and we need to really get into some discussion, just for future. I don't want to get into it tonight.
So to expand on that, done a lot of thought on this. Me and Nathan, Caleb, Chris, Rob, how Public Works operates. So this is asking for 6. I broke this up into 3 phases, with phase 1 adding 4 initially. At phase 2, you had 2 more individuals to bring that total of 6. Then one day end goal, phase 3 is 8 individuals. So if you look at our current organizational chart, operations manager has a superintendent, water foreman, and transportation reporting, and then their respective technicians. Phase 1 would add a department secretary, superintendent for transportation and water. And this is kind of that aspect of flattening that organizational chart out. Like, we're really sharp right now. So if we can bring it out, that tier 2 would help support the Public Works Director, and allow these departments to start operating on their own. So we've added a second foreman in sewer and split that out. So instead of one foreman having 9 guys, we've got 2 foremans with 5 each and a sewer superintendent, with the idea that one day we're gonna get to the point where the sewer department operates as one, the water department can operate as one, and the transportation can operate on their own. And they don't need all of this all these pieces put together by one individual. When you move into phase 2, then you see a superintendent for every single department. An additional foreman added in water, and then that transportation part-timer is absorbed into a full-time position. And the end goal would be the end and the last. Phase 3, whenever that would be, when the city grew to that point, would have a superintendent of each department, a foreman in each department, and their respective techs as they grew. I think water plus step 1 in that level. But just with the idea that one day when we get this big, we can be to a point where each department manages themselves. The transportation has a superintendent that's in charge of essentially splitting out my duties as it is. The water would be in charge of their duties, and the sewer in charge of theirs. That Public Works Director would put it all together and have all that future forecasting and planning. But that would move 8 people and however long that phase takes. But to Alderman Ross's point, the org chart with a Director of Public Works and Operations Manager didn't make sense to me either. I do see the value in having a Director of Public Works. And then I also see the value of adding upper level management as we add in these more people. So like right now with the great point with the sewer, I mean, we have the sewer superintendent, a sewer foreman, and 9 people underneath them. It's a lot for Chris to manage on a day-to-day basis. Nathan does a great job. I mean, they work great together. They're, hand in hand, but, with Chris, he's got 9 problems. If we can split that out where there's 2 foremen, so he's working about the two major problems and passing those down to the foreman, and those foremen each only have a problem of half the city, and their crews only have problems of half the city. Is that better management? Is that more long-term plan to have a more management upper in the direction and the planning, and just not one foreman with 9 guys underneath him? Be able to give Nathan an extra tool for an extra foreman, and then those foremen have 5 guys that they can direct and focus on their problems. It's just kind of, however we work our way through this, whether it's a sewer and water superintendent and transportation, then one year get 2, but I believe that one day the city will be big enough where having a superintendent of each department, so this big problem can be managed, the department can manage their own problem, this department and that department. So I think there's some happy medium in between there. Gus, this will probably open the conversation to more things, but as we grow, I think this will help us grow better than just keep adding techs, so more of a, we've got the techs that manage the day-to-day operations, the foremen support that day-to-day operations, the superintendents are looking big picture in the department, and that public works director is putting it all together. That would be my brief presentation.
I appreciate your vision or forethought. I think that you're right, that's 9 sewer technicians.
Yes, sir.
Just tell you, I have seen spans of 4 to 12 across 30-some years of managing folks, okay? And anytime you get over 6 to 7, you're gonna be challenged, okay? So it may have to be a phased type process where when the sewer department sewer department, we may need a second foreman now. I can see that it's marginal. 9 is somewhat doable, but it's very hard to develop people to do so. But at this point, I don't know that water and transportation need that. So the only other challenge with all that is when you get into 3 superintendents and they're only 2 people reporting to them. That's a bit of it. That's a stretch, to be quite honest, because you're sacrificing your average of 6 all the way down to 2. Sometimes 4 that can be seen. So that's going to be a challenge always to try to figure that out. But appreciate your thoughts.
Alderman Osteen.
I'm curious on the difference between the job responsibilities for the administrative assistant versus the department secretary, as Rep. Thomas has recommended.
Yeah, and I think the struggle that I find is that there's not a shortage of work, and to have a public works secretary and to have that individual stay in their job, it's challenging for me because I don't have, there's not that assistant level. There's not someone helping. She's great. She'll do whatever I ask her to do, but that's not her position that she's been hired on for. Will Public Works get to the point one day where the director of Public Works needs an administrative assistant? I think that may be more in charge of line with her jobs, which I would imagine that Maddie can put some insight into that as well.
So it is adding an additional department secretary. It's not categorized as an administrative assistant. As it is right now, we do not have a resident public works subject matter expert on cartograph. That's what we'd be looking to have that additional public works department secretary kind of pioneer, is my understanding. Having those department secretaries know how the system works, know how to schedule those work orders to people so that we have that knowledge in the actual department.
Didn't Ralph tell us, and I should have done my homework on this, didn't Ralph tell us recommend that we had a secretary or an assistant that was going to be the expert on a specific product or program?
They recommended an additional secretary. An additional recommendation was to have a cartograph super user.
The super user.
Not one and the same, per se.
And
I think one and the same would be advantageous, since that department secretary is often who's sending the guys out, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, it could.
To kind of piggyback on that, sorry for trying to take this up, but I'm very familiar with CMMS systems, okay? And to think that the super user is some type of, at least a department secretary type level or administrative assistant, maybe administrative assistant, but they're more project manager type levels, okay? And I know that most all of you weren't here, and this is not a shot at anything other, but that's, Nathan's position was what we were sold.
Right.
We were sold that he would crunch, that Nathan's position would be crunching numbers and so forth, the things that I believe at least the CMMS super user would be, okay? And so I realize that Raftellus, and probably because of the work and how the workflow has changed, how we utilize Nathan, may not have recognized that, but that's how it was sold to us. And that's the only reason I supported it at the time, okay? And so it feels like we're just expanding and expanding and expanding. And I think that the best strategy here is that we don't expand Secretary Administrative Assistant at this time, that we look for technology, to be quite honest, and Stevie's a good friend of mine, and I'm not trying to get rid of Stevie, I've said this to many people, but we need to automate that, okay? And I think there's ways to do that. And then we may need a, quote, project manager type level position for the CMMS system, or the OpenGov super user, whatever you want to call that. But that, I think, is a strategy that makes sense. But that's just my 2 cents. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I would add to that point that Nathan and myself are the Cartograph super users, so it was a higher end look at it.
So I guess I'm a little lost here. We have a proposed there on the screen. Unfortunately, I'm a paper guy, so that's why I'm really struggling not having paper in front of me and every daggone thing on computer. So that's why I wanted stuff handed to me, and wanted it handed to me last week so I could have read it ahead of time. And that's where I'm very upset with this new system. So I've let my gripe be known. Where I think that we need to know, Zach, what you are recommending. It's presented up there what the consultant recommended, but my opinion is that they would bring these recommendations in, and then we would have our staff bring forth what they recommend. And I want to hear what you recommend, and if Devin is different of opinion than what you recommend, that's fine too. But I would like to hear what the recommendation is that you want for moving forward into 2025 for the organizational chart, and what level of what people you want, when, where, and we can put a dollar sign to it. I fully support this suggested organizational chart. Matter of fact, it was kind of funny because just yesterday at a break, I caught Zach and said, hey, I've got a thought here. And I told him my thought, and he just kind of chuckled. He said, well, I have water and transportation together where you had sewer and water together under one supervisor. So I know my little brain, completely separate from him, is kind of in that way. So I'd like to see us go down this situation, and just want to know what the structure is and what's the cost.
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective, this is a professional recommendation. This is what I lean towards myself as my preferences.
Is what? What is?
This is my preference. This is how I make sense of it better than what the professional recommendations were.
Are you talking phase one then?
Phase one, adding a director of public works, removing the operations manager. You could look at adjusting the administrative assistant based on the board's directive, or an additional secretary. But then I would say that one out of the way. Adding a sewer foreman, a sewer technician, and then a superintendent that would be over water and transportation. 4 positions as well. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 positions total. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You can have it.
I would say, Alderman Ross, in your vein of wanting a higher level project manager, that's what that Public Works Operation Manager position is. That's going to be your project manager for the entirety of Public Works, managed by the Public Works Director, in my opinion of how that's structured.
If you have a lot of experience with CMMS systems, okay. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I guess it would depend on how it was leveled. The operations manager is currently leveled at, I can look it up here, what's it currently leveled at, do you know?
It is, I believe, a level 13 or 14.
Trying to see it here.
Or, I'm sorry, level 12.
Right. I don't believe that a super user for a CMMS system is a level 12 in our organization.
I'm not saying necessarily a project manager for that CMS system. I'm talking for Public Works as a whole, both managing the project that is Cartograph as well as all the projects that go along with Public Works. We're talking about adding in all of these rehab.
Oh, well, if you're expanding it to all the project management in Public Works, that's a
Yeah,
whole
I would say
different
that's a level 12
scenario.
position.
That hasn't been discussed yet, unless I missed something.
That's, in my opinion, where the Public Works Director was coming into the situation, was to be that overseeing eye of that project manager.
Okay, well, so far, we've seen administrative assistants and secretaries, so, because I'm not sure just for clarity, Zach, in your proposal, under phase 1, I believe, that's the second page here,
Yes, sir.
where is the super user?
I would say that would fall to the superintendents. In my mind, they're the ones they're managing the software, they're using the software, they're making adjustments for their guys, similar to how Nathan is right now.
Because in this particular case, what we've done, what we've eliminated, although we may have generally just renamed it, we've eliminated the ops manager.
And absorb that in the superintendent roles, yeah.
And added one superintendent, right?
Yeah.
Because Nathan would still be, sorry, not trying to pick on you, Nathan, but Nathan would be the sewer superintendent in your vision here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I can support this. I don't have a concern with that. I do think we need to flatten the organization. But I do not support an administrative assistant and a department secretary. Other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, could definitely cross that box.
So just for clarification for me, you're saying you support phase 1 minus the administrative assistant and
Yes.
department secretary?
Yeah.
Everything else?
Well,
you're-
no,
Just
we already
it.
have a department secretary. I think that there's going to need to be a transition time from department secretary to something else somehow. Maybe it's to project manager / administrative assistant. It depends on how you want to.
Forming that into one?
Yes, and that, I really think the department secretary, tell me if I'm wrong, but my perception is that the department secretary predominantly takes a lot of calls when people call in and say, my light's flashing, or I got water running on my street or my yard.
Yeah,
They take
manages-
those calls,
yeah,
right?
Manages the backflow, the incoming mail, the backflow
Dispatching the
reports.
guys.
Yeah.
I will point out that if Stevie is
Dispatching
not up
guys, if you
there,
don't mind slowing down just a second, what do you mean by dispatching guys?
sending the guys out on their work orders.
Isn't that the foreman and superintendent's job?
She'll get all the calls, so she puts them into Cartograph, which generates the requests. Like, since she's getting all those incoming calls, she's putting them into Cartograph directly, which generates those requests for the department.
She's not only handling the public that's coming in over the phone, she's also handling those that walk into Public Works directly.
Oh, I
And those that are
understand.
doing the
Whether it's
bulk water.
called or- I didn't think there was that many that came walking in. but maybe
And
there
any
are.
person from the public that's walking onto Public Works property, Stevie's interacting with them.
I understand.
But in that same vein, if Stevie's not there, either there's no one at the front or they're having to pull one of the guys to go and sit at her desk.
Right, and that's why I recommend that we find a way to automate that reporting, okay? I watched it years ago in Florida, where they had automated those kinds of things, and I know that they probably are some version of what I'm imagining, but that was available years ago. So whether you have to email, I mean, right now, it's all phone calls, okay, generally. But there should be some type of portal that allows them to connect and let us know electronically. No different than the, SCADA system or whatever tells us we got a problem over here.
Right, I understand.
So it is what it is.
I will say in that same vein, as far as a customer service level to the public, not many people are going to go along, or not many, but a majority of people won't go along with an automated system when they're used to being able to walk in or talk to someone
I
directly.
understand they ain't gonna like it. They're not gonna like it. I get that.
And we do have a
Right.
large
But they-
retirement population in this
but
area.
I'd say that I'm gonna guess that we have 3,000 to 4,000 users on our water and sewer system.
Yeah.
So based on that, as we add a $60,000 employee, theoretically, and I know it's simple math and it may not be quite this way, $2 more. So you want to pay $2 more a month, or you just want to use the portal? Just thoughts.
Alderman Rucker.
I appreciate, Zach, this organizational chart, phase number 1. I think it's great. I know that we used to have 2 clerical people over there to do things. I could go into detail on why there's only 1 there now, but I opposed it then, and I support more than 1 person being there. whether it's 1.5 or 2, but I support more than one. There are times, there's going to be times, and you could pull all this together, that I'm going to take off the top of my head. There's 4 weeks out of the year that that person is not there. 5, okay? 5 weeks planned, not counting other sickness, not counting education. So there's times that that person is not there. For that reason, there needs to be additional, more than just one over there. I realize we can backfill from City Hall, but then understanding, I mean, there's a lot of reasonings on why that's not good. It can be done. So I support having a second person there. Now, whether that is half-time or full-time, I would have to leave that to you to be able to justify in your own mind, and then if you need to hear, but I support more than 2 people, more than one person in that that assistance position, whether you call them a secretary, administrative assistant, you know, whatever you want to call that position, that they have a lot of functions that they do that is valuable to the organization. So
What is it that we do for Stevie's lunch coverage currently?
I'm sorry, Manny.
What do we do for Stevie's lunch coverage currently for her hour out a day?
And that's just what kind of customer service aspect you want. I mean, she has to go to City Hall every day, pick up mail, and do stuff, whether it's banking, and then most times, if she's eating lunch at her desk, most days, yeah. But, hang a sign on the window.
Giving her lunch.
Alderman Hoffman.
Appreciate you being candid about this, by the way. This has been a subject that's been bounced around a lot amongst pretty much everyone up here, I think. What about the 2 water techs? Are you in support or not in support of adding 2?
I am, but I think that taking it in chunks, getting there eventually, we just added a water tech position this year, I believe. You know, so they were previously 1 down, and then we just plussed them up to 1. We plus them up. I think, you know, taking that superintendent, making it superintendent over water and sewer function, gives them 1 more extra person. I mean, get a half person to take all of your office workload off you, then you've got that, you know, and then when you add that second water foreman in phase 2, I think we're just doing a little different and a little
slower.
Planned, or, yeah.
I got you. I definitely agree that you should add a second foreman.
Oh, yeah.
I totally agree that once you get to nine people, you're really, really stretched thin. I don't know, maybe you need a west foreman and an east foreman. I don't know how you want to break it up. That would make sense to me. You get a little specialized in your area. But yeah, I agree with Alderman Ross on that. 9 people is just, that's a lot of personalities.
I'm just going to say this, and it's a board decision with staff's recommendations, but we are growing so much here in this community. We're going to have the Oasis come in. We're going to have the apartment complex that's going to be up and coming. I've been over there several times when nobody's at the front room because they're over here. And we've said many times that we want to be proactive rather than reactive, and I think this is a very good first step. So board decision, I totally support phase 1. So I think we need to move in that direction.
Yeah, the only, I guess my question is then, so phase 1, essentially, probably that's an appointed position at that point. It's what we were kind of debating back and forth, but either way, no matter what the title is, we're looking at the person right here, right? He just becomes is that how that works?
Our decision.
Or do we have?
And I would.
Does he have to apply for that? I don't know how this transition works.
I would recommend that we explore options to someone with an engineering degree. If we're looking at cutting, if we're getting an in-house engineer, if we look at this public works director as somebody additional to that, if, you know, for a few, you know, 10, 20, 30,000 more dollars, whatever it is a year, we can get an individual in here with an engineering degree. Does that help out the city more? Does that make us more flexible, take down those costs if we can get our in-house capabilities more? I would say personally that we should look at something more qualified than myself for that position.
So then where does that put you on this chart?
Sewer Tech 1? No. I'll figure it out. It'll be.
Well, I mean, we just complimented these guys for the past 2 days, and we just moved them down to Sewer Tech 1. I'm not going to support that. So,
Sewer Tech 2?
I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with this, but I just know that what I just heard, that's not right.
Phyllis, Alderman Rose, I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's something that you probably have thought about or not, but as far as having that additional assistant there, besides the department secretary, of starting off that administrative assistant or whatever you want to call it, part-time, because I know, like many others, including myself, I've been there and wanted to see Stevie or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
and she wasn't there. I mean, she can't be everywhere all the time, and I really think there is a void, and we do need to fill it. But, you know, if it's going to warrant full-time, but I say let's start off part-time and go from there.
And I think that'd be, from what I'm hearing, good compromise on direction to have part-time staff there.
Okay.
Alderman Ross.
So the comment about the engineer, okay, and this is a conversation I've had with other folks too. From a knowledge standpoint, you would think that that makes sense. What I've seen operationally, it doesn't make sense, predominantly, because with all due respect, Drew, and by the way, I have a PE for a daughter, okay? PEs and engineers don't like to manage operations. They like to design, okay? There's very few that acquiesce or are interested or are good at managing operations, okay? I've seen it too many years in too many ways in too many companies and too many organizations, okay? I do think that that level of knowledge around how would be valuable and whether or not it fits at the top director of public works or not, but, and I guess I would just say this for Devin and yourself, however you all, based on the head counts, you all have to transform the department over time. Be cautious that a PE is somebody that's going to enjoy this role. They'll like the title, they'll like some of the salary, but what the role that you all are imagining is probably much different than what they're going to manage, because there's very few PE engineers in this world that manage operations, and most of them don't do it well, and most of them don't care to do it, the ones that I have seen. So.
Mayor.
Alderman
I
Roca.
was involved on the hiring committee along with prior mayor and prior city administrator. And the public works director was required to have an engineering responsibility, engineering degree, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line, we never hired anybody. And let me tell you what, we looked a lot of resumes and we did do a lot of talking. And a lot of what Alderman Ross is saying is what we found out. We didn't find any of them that we felt could put the boots on the ground and understand what's going on out there in the world with what these guys are doing in the trenches. And that's, so I would disagree with you, Zach. I would disagree with the fact that, and I go back to the numbers and how many, I mean, I think we were 40, 50 people. And it took a long time and we never hired anybody. And that tells me a story. So I'm not saying you get the job. I'm just saying that I don't believe that the public works director that we have with the engineering department that we are having within our city, I don't think that is an engineer PE license. So much for that. But
Alderman Hoffman.
All that being said, and we were kind of circling back around whether this is an appointed or not an appointed position, this just sounds to me like this is an appointed position. This is something that there's just a lot of institutional knowledge on the board that has input into it. And I would have never thought that you two would agree on an engineer. So I don't know. This is a complicated issue. I get all that. But to me, it's not about their degrees and doctorates. It's about getting the job done.
So try to move this along, but I want one comment, and that is, I would hope that you would aspire to attain the knowledge that a public works director would, as some of us envision, would want, okay? If you don't, then we'll just have to, if you don't want to do the job, then you'll probably never do it well. But what I would recommend is this, and I don't know how you want to handle this, but we institute a public works director, but we eliminate the operations manager. Okay, we'll just start there. I don't know if you want to take a vote or you want to get thoughts or poll or whatever, but we need to try to bring this to some conclusion.
I support that.
I think it's the board's discussion, and we're not doing any vote, but I think we just,
But she needs some direction.
well, I think, she needs to put those numbers together and bring them back, and, like I said earlier, whether it's appointed or not, that's not for this meeting. It's a job description.
It's in the ordinance, it's appointed position, so it has to be appointed, you have to put it in the budget for next year, or do a budget amendment,
Or change the ordinance.
or change the ordinance.
That's easy enough to do.
Right.
I can handle that.
It's in the code book as an appointed position.
Alderman Ross, just for clarification for me, are you basically saying phase one, but instead of adding the director, having the operation manager as taking that spot over?
That's one way of saying it, yes. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, what does Devin need so we can move on?
I need to know if, A, you are wanting us to move towards a public works director, and I'm okay moving in the direction that Alderman Ross just said. If you're wanting the department secretary, and if you do, if you want it full-time or part-time, and if you agree with the 2 water and sewer techs.
So the one question on the last part of it that I'm not clear, did you recommend the 2 water sewer techs? 2 water and sewer techs? Because I didn't quite understand what you thought was right there.
I do think the additional help, the 2 that go in sewer create a technician and a foreman.
Okay.
That's what I did on my work
Okay.
chart. And then that water tech created that water and transportation superintendent.
Okay.
And then phase 2 would get you that other water.
Okay, so it's a little bit different than what's on here, but it's basically the same number, it's just the type of
Yeah, I want to add
position.
4, yeah.
Okay. So I don't support the Public Works Department Secretary at all, but from a transitional standpoint and to work with this board and move forward, I am fine with a part-time secretary.
So the way
It's listed here.
if I'm understanding everybody, that I think the consensus is instead of, on phase one, but instead of the director of public works, operations manager takes that spot over, and then we have a part-time assistant, secretary. And
Or
then,
administrative assistant,
right,
whichever way you look
either
at it.
one, but is that kind of the support of the board? Not you, Alderman Rucker.
One thought for the board to think about. If you take his organizational chart and you take the director of public works and you change it to operational manager, we can go forward with no problems. We can always take and come back at a future time when we decide is it a appointed position or not. We can change it at any time and change it, the organizational, that position from an operations manager to a public works director. Everything in the ordinances have already been modified. All the responsibilities of the public works directors have been modified to such they either say operations manager or they say that it's the responsibility of the city administrator who has the responsibility to pass them on. Prior city administrator, myself, spent a lot of hours to make sure that that was in place. So I'm not saying, so everything is in place that we can continue to flow with that position being called that, and it'd give us some time with everything else to change it. I would see that we just change the top of that from Director of Public Works to Operations Manager.
Right. Yeah, that's,
My
now
comment-
you're going to chime in. Alderman Osteen.
I have chimed in plenty. Administrative assistant versus department secretary. What's the difference in the level grades?
One's a level 7, one's a level 8.
And as the board, we would be fine with having the difference in the pay grades? Or what is the org chart stating are equals?
Depends on their job description, and if their job description
Yeah.
fits in a 7 or job description 8, that's staff to figure out what level they fit into, based on their job description. I
Richard, I see you shaking
I
your
don't,
head.
personally don't have a horse in that race.
I was just curious.
I just think for a customer service aspect, I like somebody there when people get there. And if as a compromise, Alderman Ross, your guys' decision, keeping the operation manager at top, but filling both those two positions full-time would be my preference, so somebody's there all the time.
I'll just say that I'm okay with, let's just see what we can do with somebody there all the time. I don't think that it should be an administrative assistant. I think it should be 2 department secretaries, one's part-time, okay? Because then we don't have the problems with the leveling, all right? But as far as just changing the name at the top to
Director of Operations.
yeah, Director of Public Works, or not changing it, excuse me, to address Alderman Rucker's thoughts. I think Zach's responsibility is more than a level 12, to be quite honest, all right? And I also think that, and I've always felt this way, I was never comfortable with the fact that the head of Public Works, Water, Sewer, and Transportation was not an appointed position. And I know that you have different thoughts about whether it should or shouldn't be, but I think it should be. And so I'm not personally okay with just changing the name at the top, and then when it makes it real easy and simple, because I don't think that if we're going to expect Zach to be a, quote, Director of Public Works, whether he has an engineering degree or not, the person in that position, whether it's Zach or someone else, I think that the responsibilities and the compensation and the leveling should be reflective of what we're expecting. And I think we're expecting more from you, to be quite honest. I think that you see how this department, as far as Public Works in general, needs more than just what you have at this point. I mean, it was obvious in the way that you talked about where you might end up in all of this. And I applaud for you for the fact that you're recommending what's best for the department versus what's best for you, because that's not instinctive to many people. So that's my concern with just changing the name at the top to Public Works Operation Manager, is because I don't think it's leveled correctly, and I don't think we're setting the right expectation.
The ordinance will have to be changed the other way because he does not fit the grid. And I think that's more stuff that we need to be doing. I think we're talking, we're just, if the attorney was here, he'd probably be saying, you guys are starting to get over the line to personnel matters. That's why the simplest, easy fix for me is to do that, and we can have some further discussion as to, you know, appointed as to not appointed, as I asked earlier, to have that as a workshop. And then we can also identify the other things that need to be changed in the ordinance if we're going to do that. So there's some, you know, I just think as a move forward, that's the easiest way to move forward, in my opinion.
I think we have enough information to at least get some direction and move forward from here.
I want to say one more thing. I was about to say, can I am? I'm going to. I'm going to push back a little bit, Alderman Ross, because I agree with both of you, whoever that is. However, Director of Operations, who's ever at the top of that? And compensation, pay him if it's Zach and more responsibility. But what I don't want to see happen is he's in that role with more responsibility, and all of a sudden he has something he needs help with, but he can't because the part-time person is not there and the other person is over at City Hall. So all of a sudden this guy up here that we're putting at the top of the chart is going to have to leave his desk to go do some sort of clerical thing rather than the job he's hired for because nobody's there. So I firmly believe we need 2 people in that second spot.
Couldn't we expand, like, couldn't we start off with it being part-time and then expand it whenever the volume of work?
That was just my opinion. Yeah. Please.
I think, from my personal opinion, I think we need 2 people over there, just because right now Stevie's gonna be gone next week, she's gonna be on vacation, and then she wants to do whatever. I have my staff front desk is going over to help, which leaves my front window short. And then I have to pull people from other departments to come help, so I think 2 people over there, because to be honest, I'm gonna have to deny my staff going over to help because it's gonna be short. So you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna operate your front window for some time coming up. So I think 2 people, I've tried to not give my opinion, but I think 2 people full-time over there, you're gonna really need it. I'm just saying that, you know, you're gonna have some to figure out.
We appreciate the help too.
I mean, I'll send her over when I can.
I know
but-
it's a lot.
But my front window obviously has to come first with my person. But yeah, so I really think 2 people full-time is really important over there. So.
All right. Do you have enough direction?
I do not have direction on the it's administrative assistant.
I'm okay with the full-time too. I'm looking at this more as, let's make this guy Director of Public Works, let's get it done. However Kevin wants to get it done.
All right.
And
I'm going to move forward with full-time administrator or department secretary, administrative assistant, whatever. Me and Zach will sit down and talk about that.
I think that will be better for retention in the position as well, getting someone in with the benefits and making that relationship sticky.
sorry, didn't mean to
Oh,
go
you're
on a
good.
tangent.
You're good. Okay, so the next position is a deputy city clerk. Tara and I have talked. I do not have a need for a full-time administrative assistant position. And so we have talked about making that into a deputy city clerk. They would be available to help April and I if we needed assistance on something, but they could also be a backup to her girls and Annie as the court clerk. So I'll let Tara expand on that.
So what we're doing is right now I am trying to fluctuate since we have board meetings every 2 weeks, my packet goes out every other week. I have to schedule my vacations around. I'd really like to have a deputy city clerk that can help me, work, take some meetings, start learning some civic clerk duties. I also am helping doing planning and zoning now. I help Carrie get packets done. At least the deputy could come and sit in on planning meetings. She could start taking minutes and doing that. Right now, I'm doing all the planning meetings, BZA meetings as well. I really would like to, if at all possible, get help doing that. And then like Devin said, it's also going to help her since she doesn't have an assistant. And then
And
heaven
me.
forbid, and
Sometimes I need my copy machine.
yeah.
Printer cartridge changed.
Oh, yeah. Well, today I thought he was doing his own travel request. I was really impressed until I saw him drive in. I'm all, someone else has to be doing it because it's not me. But anyways, so she would actually be the catch-all for everything up front if anybody needs anything. It wouldn't just be a deputy city clerk. And also I'm going to train her to do court stuff. Right now, heaven forbid, if Annie was to get run over by a train or hit by a bus or something, I'd be sitting up here, me and the judge would look at each other and I would, be pretty well, like I did when Michelle quit. 3 months as court clerk. I don't want to have to do that again, but I will, but we're going to train her to do that as well. So I really recommend, and please give me my deputy.
Mayor, if I could piggyback on to what Tara's saying, she has been, and her department has been so helpful to the planning department in doing our meetings. When I started here, we had a deputy city clerk, and it was extremely helpful in that, when Tara's gone, there are so many things that Tara's signature as the city clerk has to go on, especially in my department, whether it's plats or anything like that. When we had a deputy city clerk, the deputy city clerk was able to sign in her stead in those things. So it helps us get business done faster for the citizens as well. And also it would be great, with everything that Tara has to do, if, I could work with an assistant to her to help out with the meetings and stuff like that, just to ease a little of that pressure off of everything. So I would love to see you all back her with the support of this position. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I strongly support this too. MML kind of opened my eyes up every time we've been. Seemed like every city had a deputy, and a lot of them were smaller than us. And, what if Tara wins the lottery and moves on? We don't have that person to go move into her office. So I'm a strong supporter of this too.
You looked at me.
I have no concern.
Nobody?
I'm fine with it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. The next one was the 2 construction inspectors. I kept it on here because it does have budget implications, but you guys did approve that first reading last week. So the second reading will go to the first meeting in November.
We also approved 2 trucks for them already.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Did we?
I was going to say cart before the horse. Yesterday when we ranked, one of the top ranks was 2 new trucks for the
Yep.
the inspectors that we don't even have hired yet.
So moving along, we have a couple of miscellaneous personnel situations. The first one and Chief can speak to this, but the current ambulance supervisor is ranked at a level 10, but the dispatch supervisor is ranked at a level 9. And they have similar responsibilities and supervisor position or responsibilities. So Chief is wanting to propose moving that up to a level 10.
Mayor, members of the board. Sorry about that. Mayor, members of the board, last year, during the budget process, it was like Devin said, the ambulance supervisor was moved to the level 10. Dispatch supervisor was not. They both supervise about the same amount of people. Actually, the dispatch supervisor probably has more responsibilities than the ambulance supervisor, and I recommend moving it to the level 10. I'm not sure what the decision was, why it wasn't added last year.
Anybody have any problems with that or comments?
I have no concerns.
No concerns.
Very good.
Perfect. The next one is the systems administrator. This went to the board last week, but Michael is here to speak on that behalf. I think you sent out an email for some clarification. So, Mr. Bean.
So just for accuracy, if you don't mind, this is moving from level 9 to level 10, is that right?
No, I'm going to let,
Okay, so
Thank
it's
you,
even
Mayor,
different
members
than
of the
what we
board.
saw before?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and members of the board. That's exactly right. When we presented this at the board meeting, I realize now that the timing was probably wrong and it should have been done in this environment. Hopefully all of you guys got my email with the details that I submitted to you guys. I made the mistake of going off of recommendation from prior staff, HR rep, about the oversight before Maddie got here and was told that it was a level 9. I should have known that. I came from that position. I realized then it was actually a level 10, which is what I, again, emailed each and every one of you. It went back, I think I went back 10 years. Alderman Ross had stated that he believed at one time that it was based on the employees in the department. So I went back just to give an accurate representation. At one time, I was moved to a level 11 as I was in a temporary kind of a holding pattern, trying out for the manager's job, and then shortly after that, I was converted over to the IT manager. So consistently over the last 10 years, the two positions, when we had two bodies, was always slated at a level 12 and a level 10. So I asked that we just bring that specific position back to a level 10 to basically compete with the fair market value, so we're not trying to get cherry picked out of Jeff City, which is exactly what's happening currently. So just based on that position, I ask that we bring it back to where it has always been.
Board have any?
So I struggle with where it's always been. When we started here, when I came here 7 years ago, 7.5, we had a totally different IT department.
Okay?
Would you disagree with that?
7 years ago, so when I started,
Yeah, we
yes,
didn't have forward slash.
that is correct.
Right. We had 4 people down here, or at least that we were staff or approved headcounts for 4 people, and they were doing all the maintenance and many of the things that forward slash did. And when we were told that we were going to go to forward slash and that we were going to save money by going to forward slash, we could eliminate those positions, and we just needed somebody to do local on boots on the ground customer support.
Okay.
Okay? And so saying that what we're doing now, which is still local customer support generally, in my mind, is the same as what those folks were doing when they were doing system maintenance and so forth downstairs before, I think is a leap, okay? I don't know whether they should be a level 8 or a level 9 or a level 10 because I'm not an expert at HR and leveling those responsibilities. I don't think we should change levels just because somebody out there wants to pay a little more money or bring somebody up to Jeff City and rob us. They should be level because based on the responsibilities within the organization and the leveling structure that we have within that organization. I don't think that we have enough information here to say whether it should be a level 8, 9, or 10. Okay, because I think we're comparing apples to oranges compared to what we had 8 or 10 years ago. What I know is everybody's IT department's growing, okay? I realized that 5, 6 years ago when we got forward slash and we were told we were going to save all this money, I was skeptical and we haven't, okay? But at the same time, what this is about is the position. and what the position should be leveled. So I'm going to ask this, Maddie, have we had any conversation with CBIZ or whoever it is that helps us? Because we used to have somebody that helped decide, help us recommend how we should level these. Has there been any kind of outside, or what do I want to say, subject matter expert information or feedback about where this should be leveled?
We didn't send it to a third party. I'm going to be looking at in 2025, looking for a different bid to go against CBIZ. But we did have the current IT specialist complete a job analysis questionnaire that we did use comparatively to that job description he was hired on with, and that's where the systems administrator job description that was in last week's packet came from. So we did do an internal assessment of that position.
I'll make sure I heard what you said. CBIZ had them tell them what they did, and CBIZ recommends that it be a level 10?
CBIZ was not involved in this at all.
Okay, so who else outside the organization
No
looked
one.
at this? No one. Okay.
And I will say the end of /'s contract is coming up, and there's a lot of moving parts that I can't say specifically right here because I can't
That's fair.
read the future, but things are changing immensely. / is gone. They did not apply for the managed service contract. So the way we've done business for the last 5 years and what was recommended 5 years ago, I didn't always agree with either. I was in a much different position with a much different voice. And
Understand.
I highly recommend moving it back to where it is because I do know what we do on a day-to-day basis, and what was asked even 5 years ago has changed immensely as the role in IT across the board, but I digress.
Well, what I would ask is in the future, when we come up with these things. So for example, the deputy city clerk, we used to have one, and I realize the fact that that's a zero-sum game, and so, but I think that the best thing that you all can do is to come with information that validates instead of your opinions, okay? Whether it's data in the Public Works Department, or it's the type of number of customers that we're dealing with, or whatever the case may be, because, I'm sorry, but I've seen it over the years, and I'm not trying to pick on you on this one, but it's like, just trust me. I want to trust you. Help me verify, okay? And right now, all I've got is, well, somebody is trying to hire my employees, so I want to raise it. And I'm probably going to go along with you, but that's just not sufficient. I'm sorry.
Well, I respect what you're saying, and just in closing there, again, there's a lot of moving parts with we're bringing things back in-house away from the way we've been staged for the last 5 years. Again, I can't speak to that because we haven't signed a contract. What I do know is / is going away in 60 days. And with that role there and what is being asked upon the IT department, that's where my recommendation comes from.
Alderman Hoffman.
I understand what you mean by that, Alderman Ross. It is really difficult to justify the IT world, software development, cybersecurity in a forum like this to say, here's where you're going to save money, or here's where this one thing is going to happen, because it's a very complex field. And those people need to have enough experience and enough technical knowledge to be able to work with every one of these things that we outsource to, whether it's a firewall company or whether it's /. So they have to be very, very technically proficient. And I'm a supporter of this because I think he's been doing a good job, and I think he's on the right path. And I'm trusting his judgment because I haven't seen him do anything I don't agree with. And again, I've gone through these type scenarios before where you're trying to justify it to people who don't understand software development or cybersecurity. It's just hard to explain. It's hard to get it to be apples to apples. So, I do support this. I think it's a good idea, and I think we're probably undermanned in the IT division. I think we're probably going to see that come to fruition over the next 6 months to a year. I hope I'm wrong, but especially if we start to lose some of these companies that we've outsourced to, we're gonna need more manpower. So I do support this, and I think we just need to start making a plan of moving forward.
Alderman Rucker?
I just say move forward with our next subject, because I think hopefully enough of the board feels the same way, and continue on with the recommendation from IT.
I'm on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next discussion point is the economic developer. And I wanted to get some board direction. I know that this was a position that has been in the budget. It hasn't been filled. If it was filled, it wasn't for very long. I've heard that the job description wasn't adequate, and I'm just looking for some guidance on if this is something that you want to hire, or if you think this is something that can be handled by current staff. And I've asked Carrie to be here. You know, in my previous world, economic development was done on a county level. I know that's not the way it's done here. It was also a position where it was a development of vacant land, and there isn't a whole lot of that here. It's a lot of infill type of situation. So I wanted to get a board consensus on whether this is something that you do want to move forward with and what you expect that job to do.
Alderman Osteen.
I'll start. Actually, Devin and I had some conversations regarding this position, and I want a few things clarified here. I've always been behind having this position, but I felt like once we finally got the board on board to create the position and to pursue somebody to fill the position, I believe the outcome, though, was not what I had anticipated it was going to be. Part of that may go back to us on our job description. We are very hard and fast on the job description for this position as far as degree requirements. I believe it states you must have a degree in business administration or business development or whatever. It's a very limited degree field. In my mind, and maybe this is just me, but I thought the person that's going to fill this role is somebody who has strong ties within this community. They've got their ear to the ground, they're part of the grapevine, and they know what's coming on the pipeline, who's talking about potential businesses that are looking at the lake, who's got a large plot of land that's for sale that they're going to give us inside scoop on who's looking to buy that and what can that be turned into. My mind was always somebody who was well known in this community that people would approach with that information. Unfortunately, we went a complete 180 with that and hired somebody who's not from this community, had no ties to the community, so it was basically he met the requirements of the job description, he just didn't meet what I thought the actuality of the position should entail. So I think first and foremost, when we talk about this position, we need to look back at the job description. We need to open that more all-encompassing. You don't need just a degree in business administration. Why not a degree in hospitality? Why not a degree in communications? Other fields that are going to help you talk to individuals, get your ear to the ground, and bring business to the lake. I think there's lots to be said for life experience versus degrees. Yes, the previous person held his position. Yes, he had 2 degrees, but fresh out of college. But guess what? Somebody with no degrees, but they've been part of this community for 30, 40 years, and they know every contractor down here, they know every landowner, they know before we do what's coming down the pipeline. That's the person, in my mind, that should hold that role. Anyway, for me, it went back to we were all on board with the position, but we kind of missed the boat with that job description we put out there. Because the people that were applying for that didn't necessarily meet what I thought were going to be the strengths that position would hold to bring new development to the lake. That's just my 2 cents.
Alderman Ross.
So to answer a couple of questions here, first of all, I think we should hire for the position. To tag on to what
I'm
Bob
sorry,
said.
what did you say?
We should hire for the position versus handle with current staff, okay? I do think that it should be, first of all, I think the best process is to decide what you want, what you're trying to accomplish, develop a job description, and then level it, okay? That's your decision, but I think that's the best process. I did not ever agree with that it should be an economic development specialist. I felt like it should be an economic development director type level. That was feedback that I got from other folks in that world whenever I took the job description that was originally proposed out and got feedback from folks that I know in that world. And they're not here local either. I think that the one thing I will continue to say is this. I don't know whether or not this is the best thing to do. But I know if we don't do it, we won't know. And I think it's worth trying. And I think that what I learned many years ago was that one of the smartest people in economic development I ever heard speak said, focus 80% of your economic development efforts on your current industry. And our current industry is tourism. And so I don't know that they need to be necessarily a local person, but it needs to be somebody focused on tourism. And that is what their role should be, is to develop revenue through tourism by growing our existing industry. And I think when we look at what's going on at TCLA right now and the gap that is going to be left in some ways for marketing this area, I think this is a good time to do such. And so those are kind of my 4 or 5 cents worth, if you will, that this is something we should move forward with, and it should probably be a higher level. It'll be your decision to get the right person to do that, but I think the focus on this, the economic developer, whatever you want to call them, for the city of Osage Beach should have an extensive and highly qualified background in the tourism and/or hospitality industry.
Alderman Rucker.
I would say that if we don't move forward on the position, that we need to take $50,000 to $70,000 and take it to our county organization that's involved in the reaching out for economic development. We have a countywide or multi-countywide organizations that do that. I don't want to do that. I want to have our own, but we need to put our money where our mouth is. And so if we're not going to get somebody, then let's give some financial support to some people that are working down that way. Also, with that being said, the stumbling block that we had in this was the fact that the board, in my opinion, created desires on what we wanted this position to do. There was a job description put together. There was, I think, some of this research and stuff. And then there was some disagreement on what the board, on what all the elected officials, I would just put it that way. There was some disagreement with what all the elected officials felt there should be. And so it got a stumbling block. It's behind us. Ain't no sense in worrying about it. I think moving forward, we need to make sure that we're on the right page, we're on the same page, so that the job description can be tweaked or changed or whatever, and then we can move forward. But I support the position. There is some more work that we need to do to give Devin the proper guidance, so she doesn't do everything, and then we come back and say, no, we're not going to hire that person. They don't fit what I want. So I think that we should move forward with it.
Alderman Rose.
I have been a strong advocate for the city to hire an economic developer a long time ago, back when Justin had recommended the communication director, and we talked about it, and we ended up hiring the communication director. Fine, but you know, our area, as you know, is exploding, and besides tourism, that yes, with TCLA, we may have to step up to the plate and help with our marketing. But it's not just tourism. As we know, it's going to be new investors coming in, especially on the west side, in the matter of a couple of years, once this oasis takes off and more people are becoming more acquainted, even though they say they know the lake. But if they're interested in investing, who are they going to call? And I think it's wonderful that we do have Lower Deck in the area and have had it for a long time. And that would be an organization that our economic developer can collaborate with, and I'm all for it. Anyway, that's my piece.
Alderman Hoffman.
So 2 things. I echo everything that everyone just said. I do think this is even a higher position than we had before because we lost TCLA. There's nobody out there doing. The only one doing it really well right now is our mayor, and I applaud you for all of the efforts you put into bringing economic development to Osage Beach. I think having someone of this level out there banging away with you will even help you find more avenues for us. So I'm a big supporter of this.
Okay, so I have my direction. Hiring is definitely it. The current salary range starts at 47. It's my opinion that is not high enough for that position.
Nope.
Do you agree?
Yes.
100%.
Okay. I will move forward with budgeting appropriately.
Does that mean that you would want to make this a higher grade level position?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think that, just my 2 cents, I think this is a grade level of probably 11.
Okay.
At least.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. The last thing on miscellaneous personnel is the education incentive. Alderman Osteen came to me to propose adding being a board member of an organization related to your job field as an education incentive. I added it at $500, which is basically everything other than a bachelor's and master's degree on the education incentive policy currently. And I wanted to see if that is something that the board would like to move forward with.
I'll clarify some of this, because once again, this is something I brought up. Right now, our employees do have incentives for additional licensings, certifications, et cetera, for their positions, and that's across the board with all departments. My thought process was, though, if I'm a member of the staff for the city and I hold a position on a regional board or a state board in my field, then there should be some additional incentive pay for that, because at the end of the day, they're still representing the city of Osage Beach, sitting on a regional or a state board. So I thought, if you're going above and beyond in your job responsibilities and duties, then there should be a little bit more incentive for you, because, you know, that would make more people more interested in getting additional certifications and licensing or volunteering to sit on state organizations, which, once again, yes, that's at their discretion, but that can only better them educationally, professionally, et cetera, and it can only better the city, because, once again, at the end of the day, they're still on that stage representing the city of Osage Beach.
Support everything you just said, but do we need to put a cap on that? Like, you can't be on more than, like, you start getting on too many boards just to get the money? I mean, I don't know, I'm just thinking worst case scenario.
It's got to be in a board in your field, such as if certain positions only have one board for their position within the state or within the county or region, et cetera. So
Our educational incentive, as it sits right now, caps out at $3,000 per year. However, that shakes out between current
person?
degrees held, $3,000.
3,000 per person?
Correct.
So the most anybody can get in incentives, which this would be in that, would be $3,000, no matter what kind of,
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
and that's a portion per paycheck. It's just split out throughout the
So
year.
there is somewhat of a cap that this would fall under.
Yes, sir.
Mike,
I think there's a lot of value in what you said. I can only speak for myself. In prior years in my profession, I was involved in different state organizations, state fire chiefs, et cetera, and it was valuable to the organization, my organization, because I learned stuff from other people that I could bring back to my organization. Also, Ron White made a comment today that just shows you the value. He reached out to other people that he's involved with his organization to get information. He was able to reach out to those people. The only thing I challenge staff with is coming up with the criteria. In other words, you know, MML, yes, no. You know, you got national organizations of League of Municipalities. You've got the Police Chiefs Association. You've got local organizations of Camden County Police Chiefs. I mean, there's a lot of different things there. And I think we just have to set some guidelines so that Maddie don't go crazy when somebody comes in and says, yeah, I'm a board member of blah, 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 you know,
Yeah.
or I'm the president of the organization, or I'm a secretary, or I'm a treasurer, you know, so, and realizing that those things are only on the term. So if they're a president and that fits the criteria, and they step away in March because they've served their 1 year, then their check is going to change. So that's the other challenge. So I think there's some conceptual, so there's some more work to be done to this, but I'm not saying it's bad that we're not, it's not being thrown on the table.
And Maddie?
I do have a couple thoughts. As far as just memberships within organizations, most MML, or if not all, MML memberships are paid for by the city already for people in positions. I know, like, the city paid for a SHRM membership for me. I'm not going to go and claim that for an additional amount of money to myself. That's why I'd find it hard to be just a member of an organization. I don't know that I would go that far.
I didn't mean membership, I'm sorry.
Okay, I get what you're saying by board member. In that vein, though, I think it can be misconstrued, just to play devil's advocate, that if someone is going and volunteering on a board of their own volition, the city paying them out money to sit on that board can be misconstrued as the city buying into that organization through that person.
I wouldn't believe so. I understand what you're stating.
Playing devil's advocate.
I think that's an attorney's question.
Alderman
Make sure
Ross.
We have the same brain
I know,
sometimes.
I appreciate it. I'm
To,
not,
to quote Mike Welty, perception is everything.
Correct.
Alderman Ross?
So first of all, I don't think this is an educational pay, okay? I think this is a career development pay or incentive. And I don't believe that we should be trying to say whether that we should or shouldn't do this. Now, one of the challenges I've always had is that we can't pay bonuses, or we can't pay this, or we can't pay that. I think there's value in people wanting to sit on regional, state, national boards. Definitely believe there's value. I believe that we should pay travel and so forth, but I think that all should be within their supervisor, or as the personnel person, Devin, to decide how that's done. I support with the theory of this, and we've had this conversation, Bob. We're in the same chapter. We're just not on the same page. I just think we need to leave this to their supervisors. Make sure that the supervisors have the latitude to do something, and then let the supervisors decide. Because some people may not be ready to be on boards, or especially oversight boards and things like that. And then, with all that said, what do you think, Devin? Because you got to manage this.
So my first opinion is that it is a management nightmare. So I currently sit on the board of Missouri Association of Building Code Administrators, and Ron did as well. But that could change when my term is up. So keeping track of that in HR is going to be hard. Number two, this is a little different than having a higher degree. In this situation, the city is letting you attend a training, is paying you while you're there, is paying your meals, et cetera, where obtaining a higher degree, it's not that. It's not adding value to the city in a way that the same as a higher degree or certification in your field does. So I personally, I don't agree with this one, but I will go with whatever the board agrees with.
well, you also stated that, they're paying these other things, and that's a caveat that I think that we ought to make sure that we support that, okay? When I'm an employee and I say, hey, I've got a board meeting, once a month in Jeff City or in Cape Girardeau or wherever it is, and if it's over so many miles, I need to stay overnight. But I mean, we need to show that support. That is a financial support.
Absolutely.
At the time off support. I mean, we
Yes.
got to manage that, because it's also, I believe, again, going back to my little world years ago, I would always tell my staff, if you're going to get involved in this stuff, before you're going to be saying you're going to attend all these meetings and you come and ask if it's going to be a problem, with getting you off all that time. So the staff needs to know. They just don't come in and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to be off every, the first Thursday of every month. No.
Right. I
So,
completely agree with that.
But I just think we need to be able to, and I do see here what Alderman Ross is saying and what you do. I just think that we need to support it some way or another. And
I looked at this more as an extracurricular activity, i.e. if Kerry Patterson joins the State Board of City Planners, are we as a city basically going to pay for all his travel and his meals? That's
absolutely.
automatic.
Yes.
Even though he has willingly, on his own, above and beyond his line of work or responsibilities, has decided to join this. So, see, that's what I wasn't clear on was.
And that needs to be, we're going to pay for it with prior approval. In other words, Mr. Patterson doesn't need to walk into your office tomorrow and say, oh, by the way, I'm on this board, and by the way, once a month we have this meeting in Hawaii, this one's in Cancun,
Never meet anywhere that cool.
Then if
just
that is
some prior approval.
Then if that is the case, and once again, I'll go with the majority vote on this, then that I believe is something that we are lacking as a city on promoting to our staff. That is something that if we don't move forward with this, then we should circle back and make sure people are aware, hey, at the end of the day, guess what? If you want to sit on some boards within your field, remember that the city will pay, et cetera, et cetera. And people are talking about joining any board, even though they might be qualified for it, but guess what? If you're going to sit on a board, they're going to do some vetting. There's going to be some of them, they're elected within, by a state organization or a local organization. It's not like you just say, hey, I'm going to be the new president of this board. So there is some vetting that it is obviously not people just deciding to join boards just because they see some financial incentive in it. But anyway, if we're not going to go forward with this, and I'm fine with that, I just think it is something that we can use as additional incentive for our staff and our employees to step up their game, move beyond and above their current position into a higher level.
And I will say, I think that improving that area is going to come with what I'm hoping to do with the new performance evaluation that I'm looking to get set up for this year, is having some talent planning between managers and their employees as far as challenging them to improve themselves and further themselves and plan out their career a little bit.
Yeah.
Rather than just have them come work and go about their day.
So I'm fine if this dies and we're not in agreement with it. I just wanted to have another type of incentive we should be presenting to the employees to, like I said, get them to improve their professional goals, their career paths, et cetera.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I have encouraged all the department heads to attend trainings and to budget for that, so that they can get that experience and make those networking connections, because they're huge.
Alderman Ross?
No, I'll
No?
leave it at that.
All right, that's a perfect time to end for the night, I believe. We're a little long.
You realize this was on the agenda for 15 minutes?
We're not halfway through.
What's
Yeah,
that?
We're not halfway through the agenda.
No, we're
No, that's all right. You know, and
The last
and-
2 hours was on the agenda, it's a 15 minutes.
But we brought this up, we brought this up many times over the course of last year. If we need more meetings, we'll have more meetings, because this is very, very important. So we do have a timeline tonight, but we can we'll meet again Thursday night and then see where we get. And if we need to have more meetings next week, then so be it.
Can I go over the one last slide? This will
Sure.
be personnel, into
Sure.
personnel.
One last thing, follow the mayor. I think we might as well go ahead and plan. Devin can see how many, that we're going to need either one or two, whatever. So, getting that email out to us, asking when we're available. So I think we move definitely with either one or two more meetings.
I will get that. I will reach out to all of you tomorrow.
Perfect.
So this is obviously going to change now that we have changed the percentage of the premium for the different levels. But what we had proposed, this is a comparison of what the new positions were contributing to the proposed budget and what the raises were contributing. So the new positions were $425,000 and the raises were $687,000. The raises will now increase. And when we budgeted with a clearly outstanding for everybody, I will say that I, on a personal note, am not a fan of clearly outstanding being the expectation. I think if you get a clearly outstanding, it should be for a very specific reason. I know that's probably not been the way it has been handled in the past. So my expectation is for the majority of people to meet expectations, unless you have really done something above and beyond. But we budgeted worst case scenario.
Best case scenario.
Best
Case
case
That's the
scenario.
best case scenario we budgeted for.
Best case
That's not the worst.
Yes.
I disagree.
Yes, you're right. Worst case money-wise.
Right.
Best case merit-wise.
Yes.
Yes.
Kevin, I support everything you just said. Like in the military, if you were 50, you got advanced faster, and so, but it was really, really hard to attain.
Right.
So.
Very good. If we don't have any further discussion for tonight,
Motion to adjourn.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Rucker. I'm sorry. Alderman
Morose.
Morose. All those in favor? All right, meeting adjourned. See you Thursday.